Why, hello there. To receive each episode of Sacred Symbols 3 days earlier than the public, totally ad-free. To have your questions, comments, and concerns read on the air. To hear your name in the end credits, and to score other cool perks. Please consider supporting this show on Patreon at patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. Not only will your subscription net you benefits for Sacred Symbols and allow this show to continue into the future, but those benefits also carry over to other CLS shows too, including the video game-centric YouTube show SideQuest, the retro and nostalgia-themed podcast Knockback, and the eclectic interview series Fireside Chats. In other words, you're getting insane bang for your buck. Again, that's patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. Without you, Sacred Symbols and CLS couldn't and wouldn't exist. Now, on to the show. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode 6. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Chris Raygun. Chris, how are you today?
I'm pretty good. I missed the gym, so I feel like crap.
What's your hat? You have a hat with a teddy bear on it.
It's a H3. H3, Ethan.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've only seen a few of those things. I've never
This
dealt
is
in.
the hat I wear when I don't wash my hair.
Oh, okay.
Because I skipped the gym and I messed up.
Fair enough. Well, we were just talking about my specific cleaning regimen. And I usually take showers in the morning, and I haven't taken a shower yet today because I'm about to get naked when you leave and get on my hands and knees with a bunch of bleach, clean my bathrooms.
As one does.
As one does. Why get bleach? Some people have cleaning clothes. Like my dad had clothes that he would wear, and it was just. And I'm like, you might as well just get naked. I'm gonna jump right in.
My dad had that too. He has like a pair of jeans and like a t-shirt that's covered in paint and like plaster. Yeah,
it's a look. It's fine.
Yeah.
I had that when I was a landscaper. My dad, God bless him, my father. He had this pair of jeans that he cut into basically Daisy Dukes that he would wear when he was doing yard work when I was a kid. I don't know. It was ridiculous. Like everyone in my family made fun of him for it. It was insane. It was funny as hell though.
Oh my god.
Well, it wasn't funny when you were like 10 and inviting your friends over and your dad's at his Daisy Dukes in the garden. but whatever. Sacred Symbols, PlayStation Podcast. Again, the 6th episode. We thank you guys so much for your continued love and support of the show. Remember, you can get the show 3 days early and without ads on patreon.com/ColinsLastStand, so go subscribe there. Also, at a lower level of subscription, $2 a month, you can submit questions, comments, and concerns, thoughts, ideas, etc. to our show that we will read as we go through the show each and every week.
Yeah, look at that.
Now, Chris, there's a few things I want to touch on before we get even into our corrections and notes.
Right.
I want to start with you. Now, the gnat problem seems to have reached a resolution, and I don't know if you have noticed, I actually texted you once or twice with some anecdotes from our audience, but people were quite engaged in trying to help you with your gnat problem.
I appreciate it. I tried everything. Nothing worked. None of those things, the jar with the sugar water, the vinegar, nothing worked. And I realized it was because we had a freaking a bag of rotting potatoes that was just festering in the pantry that none of us knew about somehow.
How long were the potatoes there, do you think?
Easily months. Easily.
And without, a cool and dark climate, they are gonna rot.
Yep.
Eventually.
Yep, it was fun.
So now that you've extracted the potatoes from your house, the gnats are gone?
Extracted.
The gnats are gone now? Or do you have any stragglers?
We've got like a bunch of stragglers. We're slowly, messing them up, but they're still around, but they're not nesting anymore, so it's better.
Well, that's
Thank
good.
God.
I was concerned about you for a little while.
That was frustrating for a long time. I was going mad. I used this hat specifically to like kill a bunch of them, and I got blood all over it. To the point it literally my hat was caked in blood.
Well,
That's how many gnats. Yeah, I washed it.
You washed it, it looks like.
I washed it.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know insects bled like this.
Let me let you in on a little secret that I don't know if it works or not, but I do it nonetheless. Specifically with spiders, who I loathe. I loathe spiders. I'll kill a spider, any spider.
What? I love spiders.
My brother even asked me, would you kill Charlotte? And I was like, absolutely, I would kill Charlotte if I had the chance. From Charlotte's Web, of course.
Right.
Spiders don't belong on this planet.
Spiders are the best insect.
I don't think
because they kill all the other ones.
Are they insects?
Well, they're not. They're arachnids.
Right,
but for all intents and purposes, they're disgusting creatures.
Right. I don't have any love for the insect either. And as we said the other day, I don't know that I would be sad if all of the insects and all the bugs in the entire world were gone. That wouldn't have any effect, of course, on our ecosystem. So, What were you going to say? You were going to jump in there.
I don't even know. I totally forgot.
But when I kill spiders, as I killed one last night in the living room, I leave its corpse on the wall for a little while to just let...
It's like a trophy?
Yeah, no, not a trophy.
A memento?
Think about it as a head on a pike at the gates of a town in medieval Europe.
Like a warning.
Right. Now, if other spiders see this body, hopefully they realize whatever oblivion met this particular creature might also affect me. I need to get the hell out of here.
Yeah, you think that works until you realize that gnats don't care. And you can murder an entire family of them around it, and they're just like buzzing around because they don't have the capacity to care. Or
they probably are eating their dead.
Probably.
Well, I don't know if I have you beat in terms of, the potatoes attracting the gnats in the pantry is a pretty compelling story. But I must tell you that I tweaked the shit out of my neck and back like on Tuesday or Wednesday by sleeping wrong.
I've done that.
And it's some of the worst pain I've ever been in.
No, it's really bad. I messed up my neck once the day that I had an eye exam. So, like, you had to, like, arch your neck into that thing where they, like, put that giant telescope-looking thing on your head, and I couldn't bend my neck in the right way. It was messed up.
Man, oh man.
So I got the wrong prescription of glasses for, like, 3 years.
That's nice. That's fun.
Because my neck was messed up, and I was too embarrassed to admit it.
Do you remember, you're young, but do you remember when they would blow air into your eye?
Yeah.
And they don't do that anymore, apparently. I mean, they don't do it when I go to the eye doctor, but that was, like, always the most terrifying thing. They would like hold your eye open and blast it with air.
I don't like that. The eye doctors and dentists are like, I can't.
What, you don't like eye doctors and dentists?
Nah, they're like specifically they come across to me as like very sadist.
Interesting.
It's like, what are you doing?
Interesting. I've always wondered about how doctors are gravitate towards, whatever discipline. Like, not to be disgusting, but I've always been quite intrigued by how straight male doctors gravitate towards gynecology. I always thought that was kind of weird. Like, more power to you, but like, how do you get attracted to that, to like care for that part of the body? If I were a woman, I would want a female gynecologist personally.
Right. No. Yeah. I think that would make sense.
Just if, just because they can relate a little bit more. Just as if a man's dawdling with my balls, I would prefer that.
Your verbiage is astounding.
Thank you.
Dawdling with my balls. A PlayStation podcast.
The one thing I wanted to say as we get into corrections and notes before we get into the nitty gritty is that people might have noticed, Chris, that there have been Spider-Man previews popping up around the internet and people are pretty positive on it. We were invited to go to the event, but we're invited with literally like 5 seconds notice. So we couldn't make it. So we apologize about that. That said, we're in better communication now with Sony, and so that shouldn't happen again. But there are plenty of great takes for you guys to read out there if you want a preview take on Spider-Man. And obviously we will have a full, and I would assume even an independent episode, although I'm not sure about Spider-Man. We should probably do that for big PlayStation releases, but we can talk about that and solicit advice from the audience. But
I know I'm excited.
I'm excited about it too. So I just want, in case people are wondering where's our Spider-Man coverage, it was just not possible. We were given literally like less than a day's notice and we just couldn't make it.
Yeah. I had no idea. I saw the email and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. Now, a few corrections before we get into anything further, Christopher. We were talking about Devil May Cry last week pretty extensively, and you had mentioned that Devil May Cry and Bayonetta are similar to each other. Like, you thought that they were similar. You can see like kind of a provenance from one to the other.
Yeah.
Kind of flew my mind. I didn't even think about it, but the reason for that is probably because Hideki Kamiya, who's the founder of Platinum Games, was, I think, the director of Devil May Cry. So there's that.
Really?
Yeah, and he also directed Resident Evil 2.
Oh, well, look at that.
Remember, I told you that
makes sense.
Remember, I told you that the original Devil May Cry was supposed to be Resident Evil 4. And so there's that connection. So I wanted to throw that out there. We were also a little bit nebulous on Devil May Cry's timeline more recently, and I wanted to clarify that as well. Devil May Cry 4, 2008. Devil May Cry Reboot, the Ninja Theory one, was 2013. And then Devil May Cry 5, which is back in Capcom's kind of ecosystem, is next year. So I want people to know about that. We also mentioned co-developed games and how that's rare, and I couldn't think of any examples. People let me know that Modern Warfare 3, the Call of Duty game, was technically co-developed by Sledgehammer and Infinity Ward. Again, I don't believe that that's true.
I don't know how true that is. Maybe in the map pack sense,
right?
Because I know that studios collaborate a lot on map packs, but I don't know if it's co-developed. I guess that also does kind of count as co-developed, though, if you think about it.
Sure.
If you're making content for another game, I guess.
Sure, it's dividing and conquering. I think that I couldn't find anything about Modern Warfare 3 that indicated that that's not true. But again, we were talking about Rage 2 and kind of the association to Avalanche Studios, which is outside of Bethesda's family for people that don't know, and how people are claiming that id and Avalanche are developing it together, and I just don't believe that at all. So this was an example. I couldn't find anything to the contrary, but I still don't believe it. But I wanted to point out that we might be wrong there.
Right.
We were talking about comeback games, and Final Fantasy XIV was brought up as a great comeback game because we were talking about Rainbow Six Siege, we were talking about No Man's Sky, etc. So I wanted to throw that out there. But finally, we got a question here that I think will help develop the character of Chris Raygun on our PlayStation podcast here, Sacred Symbols. It's from Matthew Perry, who I believe played Chandler in Friends.
Yeah, look at that.
It says, hey, Chris and Colin, just wondering, what was the biggest thing that appealed to you about Chris? Colin, that you wanted to do a PlayStation podcast with him. Loving the new show, Make Tuesday Great Again. We are making Tuesdays great again.
Yeah, we are.
Now, I wanted to talk about this, Chris, because some people were curious about this, and I think it would be a nice way to kind of open up a little bit to the audience. And, as we go on with the show for hopefully years,
right,
people will get to know us and in our personal lives. All they really know about us right now, or, if they're just tuning in, you have a nap problem. I fucked up my neck when I was sleeping, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all they know about us. I think it would be funny to kind of recount, it wasn't that long ago when I pitched the show to Chris. And Chris met me here in Santa Monica. Bunty was with him, our friend Bunty, and his girlfriend Lacey. Bunty and Lacey went to the beach because I live like 2 blocks from the beach, and Chris and I went out and got food. And actually, I pitched Chris 2 different shows. I pitched Chris a PlayStation podcast, and I pitched Chris a generalized video game podcast. And I was surprised that Chris wanted to do the PlayStation podcast, that he was more enthusiastic to do it, and was pleasantly surprised by that. And I mean, is that a fair recounting, you would say, of our conversation?
I would say it's fair. I remember I was thinking, like, I'm very aware that I'm probably definitely more suited to a general podcast, just because I have a lot of, I'm not dedicated to a single platform, really. I play on literally everything that I can get my hands on, because I just want to experience as much as possible. But I'm also aware that there was a void, and I just thought it would be a lot more fun to have, like, I
agree. And there's
a bunch of generalized video game podcasts.
That's exactly right. I don't want to say no. I just burped a little bit. There are a couple of PlayStation podcasts of renown. But the reason that I was attracted to Chris as a co-host, because people are curious and been asking me about this, is it's quite simple. And there are multiple reasons. It's actually the agnostic nature of Chris that was actually most attractive to integrate him into a PlayStation podcast. People often look at me as like a fanboy, which I don't agree with at all. I don't know how you could possibly think that about me if you listened to me for years.
Yeah.
As I said to someone on Twitter recently, it would be easier for me to list the games that I have talked about nicely, I guess, than the fucking myriad games that I've shit on or just straight up ignored that PlayStation has created. But that aside, you know what it's like. If you've been listening to me for years, all I play is PS Vita, PS4, and PSVR. That's it.
Yeah, that's your platform.
Right. Like that's all I play.
You're not like a mindless drone. It's just like your platform of choice.
Exactly.
Right.
And I have my specific, interests and my specific genres that I was drawn to. And what I saw in Chris was someone who has a greater knowledge of the broader ecosystem, which is incredibly valuable to our show, especially because most of the games we talk about are third party. And Chris is younger and into different genres. You're not going to hear me talk about multiplayer games very much. You're not going to hear me talking about, I have no experience actually with almost any of these games, right?
Right.
And so I think that's what was attractive to me about Chris and why I wanted to bring him on the show. And I will say with complete certainty that in terms of game knowledge and his kind of, as my dad would say, making his bones about, like he has experience and stuff, Chris knows just as much about games as anyone I've ever done a video game podcast with. And I can immediately learn that from him. It wasn't that difficult for me to ascertain.
Well, I appreciate that a ton.
Yeah, so
because this is great. I love it.
I love it too, and I think you're doing great. And it's unfortunate because we can't. I've been trying to get a guest account thing on Patreon for a long time. They don't have this built in where like I can give like you and my brother Dagan and other people I do shows with a login so you can see what's going on Patreon.
Right.
And that's not possible yet. But the comments on Patreon have been incredibly kind and incredibly positive and talking a great deal about how much more comfortable you're getting, about how much more robust your conversation's becoming. And I think it's great. So I wanted to just call that out, that I think Chris is doing an awesome job. And that's why I was attracted to him, not only in a physical way, but also in terms of his knowledge of podcasts.
I appreciate that. I can't actually read the Patreon feedback, but I'm happy to hear that it's nice and positive and snuggly.
So Matthew Perry, I hope that answers your question, and I hope that you're living well off of your syndication money. Now, what are we playing? Chris, I think we're both... I've been playing more than you, or more games than you. I don't think more than you, but we've both been playing Guacamelee 2.
Yeah.
We could talk about it, not in a definitive way. The game doesn't come out until the 21st. But we can talk about it in a broader and looser and less definitive way without breaking the embargo. So let's do that. What do you think so far of your time with Guacamelee 2?
I'm very much enjoying it. I've had not a dull moment in it so far. I'm not that far in. I think you're way further in because I was like comparing trophies and we were like neck and neck at the time stamp. But then I had to go write stuff. But it's really solid. I like it. It's hilarious.
It is very funny. It's different in that the first one's funny too, but this one is I think I understand and know Guacamelee well enough. I beat it on PS3, Vita, and PS4. I have platinums for all of that. So I've beaten it, and I'm very familiar with it. It was always funny and very silly, but this one I think has way more text and way more of a story, and sometimes it gets in the way.
Yeah.
But it is very funny and very referential and very, very stupid.
Yeah. There's some homages in it that are like really nice.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in there. So we'll talk more about it in the next couple of weeks when the game is nearing its final release.
Yeah.
But I think it's safe to say, and I think Chris would agree, that it's really, really awesome. You know, like I think we could say that. I don't think Drinkbox is gonna get mad at us for saying that.
Yeah. You've been playing Dead Cells.
I've been playing Dead Cells.
I've been really curious about. I totally forgot that it was like even accessible.
Actually, someone tweeted at me last week. And I think I emailed you or texted you to sign up for this.
I did,
for this PR. Okay, great. So there's this basically Evolve as this kind of third-party PR group in video games that represents a shit ton of indie games. And one of their PR people tweeted me because he's like, I can get you a copy of the game, and I hadn't even really thought about it. And I was looking for something to play. I tweaked my back and my neck, and I was like really uncomfortable. I was just I was actually sitting in the chair Chris is sitting in now for a while at like a 90-degree angle with like pillows all around me, playing on TV here in the office, and it's a really, really cool game. And it's a Metroidvania, but it's really not. And it's a roguelike, but it's really not. In fact, I was getting really into reading about roguelikes because I was like, this definition of roguelike seems way different than I remember. And there actually is a definition of roguelike. It's got to be turn-based. It's got to be, like all these kinds of things, which Dead Cells isn't. So it's kind of roguelike and it's kind of Metroidvania, but incredibly smooth gameplay.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful pixel graphics. And the entire idea, it's almost like Bloodborne in that you're trying to get a little bit further, get these dead cells off of these enemies, and then get them back to like a hub world, basically, where you can spend them or you lose them. And that's like gives you permanent upgrades.
Right.
It's a pretty cool game. I put up a almost 40-minute Let's Play of it today on Colin's Last Stand side quest channel in lieu of a side quest episode because I couldn't sit still in my chair to do any research this weekend because my neck felt like it was going to fall off, which would have been weird. So I'm playing that, and I've been playing Chasm.
Yeah.
And these are just 3 Metroidvania-style games, and ironically, I think Chasm's probably the weakest of the 3, which is really remarkable because it's very good.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like it's definitely hard. Like when I played Chasm initially, I was like, this is, and I still really enjoy it. But you get once you're playing it alongside like Guacamelee and like Dead Cells, it does feel like it's definitely a smaller game. But for me, the thing with Chasm is like the soundtrack. I just can't get enough of the soundtrack. It just like the soundtrack like hypnotizes me into playing it more. I don't know what it is. It's got that Donkey Kong feel to me, where it's just like I just want to hear more of this.
I gotta say, it's right at home on Vita. That's where I've been playing it, and I've been playing it in bed, and it's unfortunate because Chasm, Guacamelee 2, and Dead Cells are all going to be compared to each other, coming out within 3 weeks of each other, and it reminds me a great deal, actually, Chris, of when Call of Duty Battlefield Call of Duty and Titanfall came out in 2016.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And
it's an unfortunate time.
Right. So if Chasm snuck out a little bit earlier or was held, I think, till the fall, it probably would have performed better. I don't know how well it's doing, but needless to say, if you're into that genre, if you're into pretty gruelingly difficult side-scrolling action games in a sort of Metroidvania environment, you have a lot to love right now and coming up over the next
No, there's
weeks.
a lot of good stuff out.
It's a great time. And you can draw in Hollow Knight on Switch and all these other games too. I mean, it's just I almost feel like I want to do a video eventually. Like, are we actually going to ruin Metroidvanias? Because that would really make me upset.
How would we ruin them?
Too many.
Too many's only a bad thing if they're all just kind of middling. Nobody's going to complain about too many amazing games.
That's true. That's a great point.
It's one thing if you get like God of War and then you get like a rip-off of God of War and a rip-off of the rip-off of God of War.
That's a fair point. But Jace Tamulovich. Ooh, fabulous Russian name. Says, hey guys, Chasm is out, and I'm excited. Unfortunately, I can't help but wonder how long it will be until it is lost in the flood of games released on PSN. What hope is there for the future of digital game stores? And he says, parenthetically, I'm sure Colin can fix it. Of course I can. What do you think of this? Are you worried about this glut of game? Well, we were talking about specifically about Metroidvania, but maybe we're talking about something even deeper, which is like Chasm is just going to get lost in this mix of just games generally, digital games generally. And I'm hearing a lot from PR behind the scenes that represent these indie studios that they are not pleased with the way they're being handled and their games are being handled on PSN today compared to the way they were being handled even 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's definitely it feels like a bit of a trash heap. You really have to dig to find good stuff now. Especially, I know we've been over this before, but it's especially bad on Steam. It's especially bad on the Nintendo Store or whatever, the eShop, whatever the hell it's called. It's just going to get worse on Xbox and PlayStation as this continues. It sucks because I know there's a lot of good games there, or at least like a decent number of games that are just getting buried under like, I made a game with zombies in it too.
I agree with. So here was my proposal, and actually,
Fortress Craft.
Adam Boyes, who used to work at Sony and now works at the fuck is that studio that did Killer Instinct? Why can't I think of them? In Chicago.
Oh my god.
You guys know who I'm talking about.
Well, Rare made Killer Instinct, but the new one.
The new one, yeah. Yeah, I can't think of their name.
Remember.
Anyway. I hate forgetting things. But anyway, he was on my old show. Colin was right, because I made an episode. Basically, here was my proposal for Sony, for instance, because I was identifying that this was going to be a problem. It was actually that Life of Black Tiger game. Do you remember that when that game came out a couple years ago on PSN?
Not at all.
Oh, dude, you got to go see this game. Like, it caused a bit of a furor with PlayStation fans because they're like, what is this? Like, why is this being released? And it's similar to what we were talking about with trophy-enabled games that are too easy and stuff like that.
Right.
So I proposed the following. I was like, why wouldn't Sony just take $1 million a year, which is nothing for them, and hire, I don't know, you can hire for that much, you can hire probably 13 or 14 qualified people with benefits, give them all very healthy salaries, and their entire job is to take games that are entered into certification and just look at them and play them for a little while. And just say, like, is this something that meets a certain standard, you know, for our platform? It doesn't mean the game necessarily has to be good, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the game isn't functioning. But does this game need to be on our platform? Is this game, because it really does come at the sake of something else in discoverability. Right. And Adam really pushed back pretty hard on that, but I don't really see his point of view. Like, I don't understand why one of the stakeholders.
What was his argument?
Like, you can't stymie the market, that like games just belong in the market. People make games forever and then they have nowhere to sell them or whatever. And I'm like, but making a game and putting it on PSN today, especially with no PR support and no review process or anything like that, is basically making a game for no one. So it's like, instead of encouraging people to do that and racing to the bottom, like what happened on iOS and like what's happening on Steam, my proposal was simply like, have a group of wise men and women, basically, that their entire job is to just say yes or no. And basically, if maybe 9 out of 12 say yes or something like that, then you just put it on. And maybe they look at a game for a second and they're like, yeah, of course.
It is getting like really irritating to me, especially because coming from, I inhabit the PC space quite a bit, and this has been a problem for a while, where it's like there was a common argument being like, hey, PC is amazing because you have access to every kind of game, all these games, but it's like the majority of them are crap. That's the thing. It's like you have just kind of a large variety of garbage, and there's amazing stuff there, but it's buried. So the thing that was so appealing to consoles to me, especially like once things started, like the indies started coming in, was, this is like Steam, but there's like quality control. You're not going to get like, I don't know, like here's a game that vibrates your controller to the beat of a random song, and that's it. You could bet on what you were going to get was going to be like Explosion Man or Super Meat Boy or something like that. But now it's just kind of the same, and it's I don't like it.
I just don't know who benefits. That's my whole thing. I don't think anyone benefits.
Yeah, I think it just hurts. I'll tell you who it benefits. It benefits the people who are pushing out shovelware, because they get to make cheap nonsense for very little money, sell it for probably far more than it's worth, and probably rake in some money from people who are not all that well versed in the market.
Sure.
To know what they're getting.
Sure. I suppose that could be looked at as a winner. I sometimes wonder if the cost for an ESRB rating and certification and stuff is even being eclipsed by the amount of copies that some of these games are selling. But removing them, like, it hurts Sony because they now have an ecosystem that people are entrusting less and less. Like you said, to your point, you would go on XBLA back in the day and you'd be not even 10 years ago, you would be able to go on there and be like, yeah, I'm going to get a quality game from this marketplace, or at least something that is playable and worthy. And so people become less trustworthy. They spend less money. They look less. And then the game developers that make great, I just don't know who wins, really. Again, maybe outside of the purveyor of the shovelware. Good question, though, Jace Tamulovich. Ben Springston also says, hey, Colin and Chris, really love the show. I've been playing Chasm lately. Chasm is a departure from the genre of game that I usually play, and I love it. Hearing Colin talk about his love of Metroidvanias inspired me to branch out a bit. Are there any games that you wouldn't normally have played but ended up loving? Thanks, guys. Now, I don't think we have to be specific, but are there any genres that you've gravitated towards or specific games or series that you didn't think you'd like that you ended up really enjoying?
I don't know. I feel like I've always had a pretty good understanding of my own tastes. I think there was a game. Did you ever play Enslaved: Odyssey to the West?
Yeah. That's a Ninja Theory game.
Yeah, I thought. I don't know. It's not a genre, but it was a game that I looked at and I was like, this looks stupid. But I played it and I loved every second of that game.
It's a beautiful game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I played it. Pretty.
I played it. I want to say during. I didn't beat it, but I played it during like the IGN Extra Life stream in like 2010 or something like that. And I enjoyed it. Yeah, great example.
Yeah, I don't really know. That's probably the only thing that I can think of.
For me, it's only multiplayer games. Like I'm often surprised when I jump into a multiplayer game, like how I actually do enjoy playing it.
Yeah, they're fun.
Battlefield 1, I think, was the most recent example where I was like, oh, this is actually. I don't really want to play this for very long, but I can certainly see why people would enjoy it.
Yeah.
So thank you for your question, Ben Springston. Now, Chris, let's get into the news.
Alrighty.
By the way, Chris and I were debating before we started on if we should include the EVO news that was announced this weekend. EVO, of course, being the fighting game tournament. Some characters were announced in various games.
Yeah.
I think like Negan from The Walking Dead's in Tekken 7.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, what?
I'm like, all right.
Yeah. And coolers and Dragon Ball Fighters. That's it.
But I wrote this weekend, so this is this is otherwise pretty accurate for now. Number 1, PlayStation 4 has officially broken the 80 million units sold barrier. Indeed, at 82.2 million PS4s sold through June 30th, PlayStation 4 is mere weeks away from officially outselling PlayStation 3, which stalled out at a mighty impressive 83.8 million units sold. It took PlayStation 3 9 years to reach 83.8 million units sold. It will take PlayStation 4 fewer than 5 years to reach and surpass that number. We can now say with certainty, barring something totally unexpected or cataclysmic happening to either Sony, the PlayStation ecosystem, or video games generally, that PS4 will reach the 100 million units sold mark before all is said and done, something only 3 other home consoles, PlayStation 2 at 155 million, PS1 at 102.5 million, and Wii at 101.6 million have managed to accomplish. PS4 should settle in as the second best-selling piece of PlayStation hardware, home or handheld, ever released. At 3.2 million units sold between April 1st and June 30th, Sony's year-over-year numbers are actually decelerating. However, Sony anticipates 16 million total PS4s sold in the current fiscal year. Software sales, meanwhile, are booming. A third more games were sold this year than in the year previous.
Wow.
So a lot of interesting statistics there. What do you make of this? PS4, by, I assume this time next year, will reach 100 million, and it's going to settle in as the second best-selling console of all time, only behind PS2. Could you have possibly anticipated that in 2013?
When everybody was saying, like, the consoles are dying?
Yeah.
No, but it doesn't surprise me either. Because I feel like gaming in general is a lot more mainstream than it used to be. Even 10 years ago when it wasn't even all that niche. That's insane, though. That's a pretty insane number.
It is. And we can't compare it we could compare and contrast it to Switch, which just reached 20 million in a little over a year and a half almost. So that's great for them. It's harder to compare it to Xbox because they haven't announced numbers in 4 years.
Yeah.
People think that it's probably somewhere in the 40 million range. So PS4 is conservatively outselling it 2-1. But yeah, it's a great number and a great sign for Sony and showing great corporate strength for Sony. PlayStation has been essential in getting Sony back to where it used to, or near to where it used to be in terms of corporate might and money. So congratulations to them.
Yeah, look at that. PS1 at 102.
Yeah.
What's your favorite PlayStation console?
Probably PS3.
Really?
Yeah.
PS1 for me.
Yeah. PS1's a great choice. I will say that the PS2 is my least favorite.
I agree, actually. Even though I actually really like it.
I like it too, but yeah. I don't know.
That was a Dragon Ball Z console for me.
I liked GameCube at that time much more. Number 2. Even though PlayStation 4 is selling like hotcakes, it wasn't enough to be the best-selling console in the United States in June. The honor goes to none other than the NES Classic, which outsold PS4, Switch, and Xbox One for the month. Now, it's important to note that the NES Classic cost approximately a sixth as much as the base PS4, and that PS4 obviously outgrossed NES Classic significantly. However, this is the first time since MPD started tracking console sales in 1995 that the NES was the top selling console in the United States.
That's kind of crazy. That's awesome. That's such a weird, it's so odd.
You know, I have the NES Classic and the SNES Classic, and the NES Classic is just a far superior machine in terms of quality of game to me.
Yeah? Than the SNES?
I just think the SNES
Than
Classic,
the SNES?
yeah, has like, it doesn't have that many games that I really want to play, personally.
Yeah.
NES Classic, much more. But good for them,
Yeah,
nonetheless. Number 3, MPD didn't only release its monthly console sales numbers, it also released its software sales charts. PS4 exclusive God of War was the second best-selling game of the month in the US, bested only by Mario Tennis Aces on the Switch. Other notable PS4 games include Grand Theft Auto 5 at 3, The Crew 2 at 4, Far Cry 5 at 5, FIFA 18 at 8, Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy at 9.
Wow.
Detroit Become Human at 10, Rainbow Six Siege at 13, NBA 2K18 at 14, Call of Duty World War II at 15, MLB The Show 18 at 16, Assassin's Creed Origins at 17, and Vampire with a Y at 18. The top 10 PS4 games on a SKU basis, so the previous sales I was talking about included Switch and Xbox One sales and PC sales.
Right,
so on a SKU basis, the order of the top 10 is God of War, Detroit Become Human, Grand Theft Auto 5, FIFA 18, The Crew 2, MLB The Show 18, Far Cry 5, Vampire, Lego Incredibles, and Horizon Zero Dawn. The top 10 best-selling games of 2018 to date are in order: Far Cry 5, God of War, Monster Hunter World, Call of Duty World War II, Dragon Ball FighterZ with a Z, Grand Theft Auto 5, Mario Kart 8, NBA 2K18, MLB The Show 18, and Super Mario Odyssey. And the 10 best-selling games of the last 12 months, from mid-year to mid-year, are in order: Call of Duty World War II, NBA 2K18, Destiny 2, Madden NFL 18, Super Mario Odyssey, Far Cry 5, Star Wars Battlefront 2, Grand Theft Auto 5, Assassin's Creed Origins, and God of War. Not too bad since it's only been out since, April or May?
Yeah, wow. That Crash Bandicoot being on a top sales chart is kind of insane to me.
Yeah, I think it's the Switch release that probably helped it.
Yeah, no, definitely. But it's like a friend of mine, he does a show for Destructoid, and he was telling me like, hey, Crash Bandicoot's been selling a lot in the UK for several months, and I don't know what the hell's going on. I was like, that is odd.
We can always garner interesting data from the UK sales charts and the Japanese sales charts because they're the only, I don't want to say Japan doesn't speak English, but the only English-speaking or readily translatable sales charts outside of the US that we ever get. And it's always interesting watching the different patterns in those regions.
It's super weird.
Especially the UK, because you think it would be very parallel to us, but it isn't always in that regard. Brett Medlock wrote into us, though, Chris, and says, do you think Sony has anything to lose putting older exclusives on PC nowadays? Opening up games like Infamous 1 and 2 or the Resistance trilogy to a big audience to make a quick buck and it not affecting their current games lineup or strategy. He thinks that would be a good idea. How do you feel about that?
Apparently, it's working pretty well for Microsoft.
It is. Remember, State of Decay 2
right? Yeah,
was very much helped by that.
Yeah, and I don't know, especially with old IPs that probably aren't selling much on hardware that people have already experienced it on. Like, I'm not gonna go back and buy Infamous 1 or 2 again because I played it already. But I know there's a lot of people who are on PC or even on, why not? I don't see a problem with that necessarily, especially if they don't plan on doing anything with those series.
Right. I think you're right.
Even if so, actually, it might not be a bad way to, promote it.
Well, I made a point on Knockback, my retro podcast I do with my brother, where I'm like, why doesn't Nintendo put Virtual Console on PlayStation? Like, that's it. Like, just put Virtual Console on PlayStation. And then say, like, oh, if you want the new Mario and the new Zelda, you can come over to us. But here's a way for us to make 5. I would buy every one of those fucking games probably on PlayStation.
Yeah.
It's a similar kind of situation. Sony's only published, to my recollection, one game on PC to date, like in the recent era, which is that Arrowhead game, Helldivers. That was on PS3, PS4, and Vita, and PC. And I think that was an experiment to see how that would kind of cannibalize or help their sales. So there's probably some data that they have. But I look at it in a similar way as Chris does, although I would say that PlayStation, it might cause some complications with PlayStation Now. It also might cause some complications with proposed maybe backwards compatibility for the next console.
That's right. I forgot about PlayStation Now. They really should get on this backwards compatibility stuff like immediately. I don't know what the hell they're thinking.
I think it'll just be the next console. If they haven't done it yet, I don't see why they would.
Yeah. What the hell?
We'll see. Number 4. August's free games for PlayStation Plus have been revealed. By the time this episode publishes to Patreon and obviously to free feeds, the games will be live for you to cop for free, so long as you have an active PS Plus account. On PlayStation 4, you can look forward to sandbox mobster game Mafia 3 and 4v1 horror game Dead by Daylight. On PlayStation 3, role-playing game Bound by Flame and FPS Serious Sam 3 are available. And on PS Vita, touch-controlled draw slasher and turn-based strategy game Space Hulk, which I think takes place in the Warhammer universe, can be yours. So go get those games. Remember, you can just mark them as downloaded on PlayStation Store, even if you don't want to play them now. And then if you get a Vita later or you have an itch to play a PS3 game or a PS4 game, you can go and claim them as long as you have an active PS Plus account. So there's no reason for you guys not to go in there and check all of those boxes.
I didn't know that for a long time. I would just download them.
Yeah,
and I just
to be
ran
safe.
out of space.
Number 5, Horizon Zero Dawn is leaving the PS4 and becoming a tabletop board game. The new game comes by way of Steam-forged Games, which has previously worked on board game iterations of other popular gaming franchises, such as Resident Evil and Dark Souls. Little else is currently known about the project, though it will be kickstarted in the near future, and we'll bring that to your attention here on Sacred Symbols when the time comes for you to throw your support behind it.
It's being kickstarted?
That's what I read. Yeah.
Whoa, weird. By the
Steam-forged Games. I read
a license?
Yeah, it's totally on the up and up with Sony.
Oh, okay.
But I think that they just don't have the money probably to pay for it.
Right. That's cool. I like those kind of things. Like I really liked. I used to play this Metal Gear Solid Risk a lot.
That sounds good.
It was really fun.
I love Risk.
That's a good version of it.
Risk is great.
Yeah, Risk is amazing.
A really, really great game. I used to be in a roving Risk tournament in San Francisco. We used to play at a bar like every month or so.
Risk at a bar.
Yeah, and there was a trophy and everything.
That's awesome.
Everyone would put $20 into the trophy and then play, and then it's such a cutthroat game. Like people.
No, yeah,
you had to really go in not like being equipped to be like, I can't get upset when someone like betrays me and stabs me in the back.
I love that game.
It's a great game. Number 6, Madden NFL 19, which comes out this week, seems to have snubbed controversial ex-49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick. Keyword seems. Those with early copies of the game noticed something peculiar about a song that prominently plays within. A reference to Colin Kaepernick has been censored, as if it's a curse word or inappropriate term. The edit comes in Big Sean's verse in the song Big Bank, where he says, quote, "You boys all cap. I'm more Colin Kaepernick," end quote. Interestingly, Kaepernick's name was also erased from last year's Madden NFL 18, though no one seemed to have noticed or cared. There, a song called Bars of Soap had a scrubbed line that said, quote, "She be hoping that I take a knee like Kaepernick."
You should make a channel that's entirely you narrating rap lyrics.
I would love to. Well, I've been tweeting out rap lyrics and attributing them to Ben Franklin recently. I don't know if you've been seeing that.
No.
EA's response to this year's controversy is as follows, quote, "We made an unfortunate mistake with our Madden NFL soundtrack. Members of our team misunderstood the fact that while we don't have rights to include Colin Kaepernick in the game, this doesn't affect soundtracks. We messed up and the edit should never have happened. We will make it right with an update to Madden NFL 19 on August 6th that will include the reference again. We meant no disrespect and we apologize to Colin, to YG and Big Sean, to the NFL, to all of our fans and players, I guess, and our players for this mistake." I think I had a typo there.
Yeah.
End quote. So Nate Brierly wrote in and said, "I absolutely love the fact that EA could have chosen from millions of songs which don't mention Colin Kaepernick's name, but chose one that does, then decided to edit said name. Incredible." It is.
It is actually insane.
But what do you make of this? Because this, honestly, I don't want to delve too deep into this fucking nonsense with Colin Kaepernick, but it seems like people's indignation kind of jumped the gun. It seemed like they might not have the rights to include him in the game. Or there's something there, and Electronic Arts is so buttoned up that their soundtrack guys were probably like, "We gotta."
Yeah,
we can't.
Like
it seems reasonable to me. I don't know if it's true or not.
That sounds pretty. I have no reason to doubt that because that sounds exactly like a mistake a suit would make. You know?
Yeah, right.
Like, oh, I don't know. Can we have this guy? You know, I feel like. Yeah. Why is that? Is it like doubted?
Well, I
think it was like political. I really don't.
Well,
EA doesn't want to get political.
No, before they released the statement, people were all up in arms and upset about it. Again, not noticing that he was also not in Madden NFL 9 or 18 last year in a song, and maybe for a similar reason. Although I think he was actually in that game, so it kind of undermines their whole mantra of like we don't have the rights to use him. But he's not an active player. I think he's still in the NFLPA, so I don't really know. I don't know. But it's certainly one of the most newsworthy things that happened last week in games.
Yeah.
And I don't know. What do you make of the whole controversy anyway? Like, I think it's so stupid.
I paid so little attention to it because I don't know anything about sports beyond there are spheres in it.
Yes.
That's like and people cheer.
They do.
I have such a little understanding of sports that I was like, oh, hey, it's like a knee going on. Someone's kneeling. All right. I just like turned around and looked the other way. I couldn't bring myself to care about what the hell was going on.
I respect that. It's one of those runaway train situations where I feel like everyone's kind of lost sight of what actually happened. And like the indignation is so greatly outpacing what the reality of the situation that it's hard for me to, it's hard for me to feel bad about anyone in this situation, but I think that like people just need to let it go already. Like,
yeah,
it's over. It's fine that he.
I totally forgot about it.
I actually kind of did too until. I read a lot about football because I love football, and he is suing the NFL. So.
Oh well, look at that.
That will probably play him prominently.
Yeah.
Number 7. Not surprisingly, it doesn't look like the Resistance franchise is ever going to come back, at least under the direction of Insomniac Games, the studio that created and shepherded the once important PlayStation franchise on behalf of Sony. In an interview with Australian website Finder, Insomniac's James Stevenson, a buddy of mine, said when asked about Insomniac being given another crack, quote, "It feels like a long shot to me, but I have learned over the years to never say never. I think there are a lot of people out there that have fond memories of a Resistance game for the PS3 era, but yeah, never say never. It's just that we have no plans to make another Resistance game in the future," end quote. When asked if another developer may ever take a crack at it, and this is me jumping in, showing a complete ignorance of who owns the IP, Stevenson said the obvious, quote, "Obviously, other developers made the portable versions for the PSP and Vita back in the day. It's actually Sony that owns the IP and owns that universe. So I guess if they were really passionate about making Resistance 4 and we couldn't or didn't want to do it, Sony could totally engage another developer, but that would be up to Sony, not us."
Yeah, it's not surprising to me. That doesn't surprise me at all.
I would love to see Resistance come back, but I don't think that there's probably a market for it.
You don't think so?
I mean, it seems
I guess
like...
so. I guess we were talking about like FPS.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's been what?
When
Resistance 3 came out in 2011, I think? 2012, 2011, I think?
11, I think.
And then Burning Skies came out in 2012, I think, or 13 on Vita. So it's already been a while since... And that game was fucking terrible. So it was... It's... I don't know. I don't understand why, and I'm a huge Resistance fan, but I don't understand why people are kind of harping on this. It goes back to our mantra, like, let them do new things. They're doing something new.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be getting Spider-Man if they were doing Resistance 4,
No, yeah, I agree. And also, if you have a good thing and it ends, just let it end. Don't, like, drag it from the grave.
It's like what we saw this past week. Murphy Brown is getting a reboot.
I know what Murphy Brown is. I didn't watch it.
And
but I know
Frasier.
what it is. Frasier, oh my God.
It's like, why can't anything... You're right. Why can't anything just be left alone? Just leave everything alone, for God's sake.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think, I mean, just on a tactical level, I think Sony probably is choosing Killzone over Resistance in terms... I don't think they need to have 2 roving first-person shooter exclusives. But we'll see. They have about 7,000 third-person action games, so...
That's true.
Number 8, BioWare has confirmed that it's still toiling away on both Mass Effect and Dragon Age, even as it's currently all in on Anthem. Its foray into the multiplayer space due out early next year. In a post on BioWare's website by Casey Hudson, who is the GM of the studio, he said, quote, "We hear loud and clear that interest in BioWare doing more Dragon Age and Mass Effect, so rest assured that we have some teams hidden away working on some secret stuff that I think you'll really like. We're just not ready to talk about any of it for a little while," end quote. Anthem is due out on February 22nd of next year.
I never like hearing news like this. I never like hearing like, hey, I'm a studio and I'm working on like 7 different games. It's always like, what do you... am I weird for not liking, like, because I remember reading that tweet. They were like, "Don't worry," or something like that.
Right.
Like, "Don't worry, we're working on Mass Effect and Dragon Age." And I was like, that's worrying to me.
It's exactly what we were talking about, right, Chris, with Bethesda. Like, there's no, with the Elder Scrolls and with Starfield, like, I don't care until you show me something tangible. I don't care. It's as if you're not working on Mass Effect, and I don't really believe you.
Well, it's also like Dragon Age. I don't know. I never really cared about Dragon Age. I don't know about you.
No, I played Dragon Age Origins. I did not play the others, and I thought it was pretty bad, actually.
Oh,
in my opinion.
Yeah, fair enough. I played it a little bit. I thought it was fine. It didn't grab me enough. I loved the original Mass Effect, but Andromeda's pretty much just destroyed any interest I had in seeing that series continue in any way. So even under the pretense that this could have possibly been an exciting announcement, I'm still just like,
It's just exactly what we've been talking about with Bethesda. I don't know how else to say it. It's like, I don't need to know this. Why are you even telling us this when Anthem's... This is like, why can't you just shut up?
Yeah. Anthem's coming out. Let Anthem breathe a little bit.
Right, exactly. You're going to need to let it breathe too. It's going to be competing. there's going to be a lot of naysayers about Anthem and BioWare's direction with that game, and there's just a lot of competition for it too. Like, shut up. I don't care if Anthem bombs, but you certainly should.
And it also like makes it feel as though this might be just me reading into it, but it makes me feel like they don't even really fully believe in this thing, you know? Because if you're like working on Anthem and you're like, okay, we finished Anthem, now on to Mass Effect. It's like, is Anthem gonna receive like a decent focused amount of support? I don't like it.
Also,
I'm sure it will, but I just don't like this.
Also, the most prominent example of BioWare splitting its energies on two different games gave us Mass Effect Andromeda.
Right, exactly.
So you don't want to talk. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
What else can you possibly say other than that you're completely right? You know. Number 9, Capcom is keen to continue remaking games. Word comes by way of an answer Capcom provided to an investor. Capcom noted that Resident Evil 2 Remake, due out in January of 2019, should do more than 1 million units in sales. Quote, further, regarding remakes and re-releases of titles in our back catalog, we expect to explore these further with a variety of properties as part of our strategy to utilize our library of IP. End quote. They use the word further in there twice, which annoys me. Last week, we told you Capcom is experiencing a financial renaissance of sorts on the back of not only re-releases, but collections as well. It seems like that's set to continue into the future. Thomas Conley wrote into us on this topic and said, hey, Colin and Chris, with the recent news that Capcom is looking to remake more games in their back catalog after RE2 Remake re-releases, what are some staple Capcom titles you would love to see that get the same remake treatment? My personal pick would be Okami. It's a cult classic that not a lot of people played, but it's very Zelda-like and could benefit from being remade with current-gen graphics to enhance the watercolor art style and voice acting since the original game didn't have it. Thanks for all you guys do. Are you thanking us for everything?
Literally everything.
Make Tuesday great again. What do you think of Thomas's question here? Is there anything? Okami's actually a great choice.
Okami would have been my choice, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, straight up. That was a great game that looked awful on the PS2.
Yeah, it
didn't
look
so bad.
It didn't look very good.
But,
another Kamiya game, I think, too. I think he worked on that before he went to Platinum. Could be wrong.
I would love that.
Yeah, Okami's a great example. You know, a cool re-release, a Capcom game that was stranded on Wii called Zack and Wiki. It was an adventure game that was released in 2007 on Wii. It would be cool just to see some of those kind of more minor games get a little bit of love. I'm surprised that they never brought that over to anything else. But I've often talked about how I think they should totally remake Mega Man, and I think they have the studio to do it. I think that Capcom Vancouver is completely equipped to make a third-person action open-world Mega Man game, and I don't understand why they keep making them make Dead Rising.
Do you think they could do a third-person Mega Man game?
Yeah. I mean, they have. Mega Man Legends was third-person.
Wasn't that, like, bad?
I don't care much for it, but people do love it.
Huh.
My whole example, and again, referencing my retro podcast Knockback, we did one on Mega Man 1, 2, and 3. And I talk at the end of that episode about my idea for a Mega Man open world, like, role-playing game. And I think that they can totally do it. I'm
sure it's probably doable.
I really do feel like we're
doubt it's a possibility. But
I don't know,
but
man.
Then you think about, like, Sonic.
Yeah.
And it's transitioned from 2D to 3D, and you're like, this doesn't work at all.
That's true.
In any sense.
That's true.
But I guess like
that's
Mega Man's
Sonic.
not speed oriented.
That's Sonic.
It's more like platforming. But yeah, I don't know.
It's hard to make Sonic good. You know? Like it's hard to make Sonic.
This is just becoming the berate Sonic show.
Number 10. This is an interesting one. FIFA 19 is getting a survival mode.
Oh my god.
Sort of. EA Sports revealed the storied franchise's newest feature on Eurogamer. The idea in FIFA survival mode is that when you score a goal, you permanently lose a player on the pitch, a sort of self-inflicted red card. Soccer requires at least 7 players per side, or it's a forfeit, and FIFA 19's rules keep in line with this. Therefore, it's the first of 5 goals that effectively wins the game unless time runs out first. But scoring early leaves you defenseless later on, so it's a game of strategy too. This is actually pretty clever because you have to kind of decide when you want to score. You know, if you score all your goals early and then it's 11 to 7 or something like that, then
that's kind of neat.
Yeah, I actually kind of like it. It actually sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, I think I don't care much for sports games, right? But the reason I don't care about sports games is because it just feels to me like a lot of simulation, and it's like whatever. That's not interesting to me. But this is kind of interesting because it's something that you wouldn't really see in a proper game. You know, you wouldn't see that in a game of real soccer.
Right, exactly. So it's clever. It's battle royale-ish.
Yeah, well, it's a game mode in a video game, which is nice.
It is.
As opposed to just like play soccer.
I haven't played FIFA in forever. I'm not really a big soccer fan, But I know
I actually like soccer.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh, so you are a sportsman. Why don't you move to Europe and be with your people then?
Like European Puerto Rican.
You don't have to go to Europe. Number 11. Something peculiar is going on with Spyro Reignited Trilogy. Even if you buy the game at retail, you'll need to download Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage and Spyro Year of the Dragon from the PSN. Disc be damned. News came by way of the game's official website, which notes, quote, games 2 and 3 require download via internet, end quote. When asked for comment, Activision told PlayStation Lifestyle, quote, as with most games today, downloading an update after purchase is quite common. The language on the packaging and on the web is to let players know the requirements for Spyro Reignited Trilogy, end quote. I fucking hate Activision. It's entirely possible this is to allow developer Toys for Bob to squeeze extra dev time for entrants 2 and 3, letting the disc itself go gold while putting in some extra work, but that is pure speculation. And James Eleazar Nunez wrote into us and said, also recently the Spyro Reignited Trilogy recently announced that the second and third games were part of a day one patch. What are your thoughts? Well, we're going to get into that, James. What do you think of this? You're looking forward to this.
I am looking forward to this.
Is this a problem for you? If you go out and buy the retail version of this, games 2 and 3 are not on the disc. So is that weird to you? It's not uncommon, by the way, for this to happen. But
right. It's definitely weird. It's super odd to me because I mean, I don't really get my games on disc anyway, so it doesn't affect me. But I can imagine being somebody in, the middle of the country who maybe doesn't have the best internet, who then has to go out, they're getting this disc, and they're installing it on their console only to find out that they have to download however many gigabytes of game that they thought they would have been able to just install directly. And that irritates me a little bit. Not necessarily from my perspective, but just from an outside looking in. Again, yeah, I don't know. I'm not personally put off by it, but it is, odd to me. Because every collection that I've ever had had the games on the disc.
It's just weird if you what if you bought it and you live in your PS4 is not even hooked up to the internet or something like that, and you can't conceivably play it. I don't understand this. I do think it must have something to do with the games not being ready. I don't understand why else that would be.
That's weird. That's a problem if the game's not ready and
comes out in September.
Yeah, and it's an old game.
Yeah, I mean I can't think of another conceivable reason for that. I'd love to hear from people if they have any thoughts on this, but putting the first game on the disc, requiring the download of the second two just indicates to me that they're entering certification late and they wanted the game to go gold before that. So that's the kind of simplest explanation.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's true or not.
I don't know. That's concerning. I'm sure it'll be, I don't really think I don't think the game will be broken, but God knows.
Number 12, this is a wrap-up. Popular board game Gloomhaven is getting a video game adaptation as revealed at Gen Con 2018. It'll be a dungeon-crawling roguelike and will come out at an unknown time in the future. Grip Combat Racing is coming to PlayStation 4 on November 6th. And this is interesting, finally. If you're looking forward to The Walking Dead game's final upcoming season, but either never played some of it or all of it, or the previous entrants are lost on you, or you have saves stranded on other hardware, whatever, you can actually go on telltale.com/storybuilder. That's telltale.com/storybuilder. And you can make a series of choices for the different seasons that will then be able to be imported into your game.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
So again, not extraordinary. I think Mass Effect did something like this back in the day when it came to PS3, but still a cool option for you out there if you're looking. So again, telltale.com/storybuilder. That's it for the news, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to get to the new game releases this week. Before I do, as I reminded you guys a couple of weeks ago, Ryan Clements is now officially no longer at PlayStation. And this might be the last drop we ever get. But I did notice that the author field on this drop was Justin, who also works at PlayStation, a buddy of mine. So maybe the torch has been passed. And we will indeed still have fun and ridiculous game descriptions to read on a weekly basis.
Well, let's hope.
Let's get into it. The first game up is the one we were talking about earlier, Dead Cells, comes to PlayStation 4. Experience a Roguevania, mixing an interconnected world, branching paths, and unlockable skills with the constant adrenaline-pumping threat of permadeath. Highly recommended. Defenders of Ikran, the definitive edition PS4. Defenders of Ikran is an adventure/shmup game that mixes the classic action of a shmup and the exploration of an adventure game, including dungeons and a sci-fi experience. The Dreamlands Aisling's Quest comes to PS4 and Vita. The Dreamlands Aisling's Quest is an adventure game that blends fantasy and mystery elements to present a gripping story. Venture into a world shaped by Aisling's dreams and nightmares and go on a quest to face the Mourner.
Ooh.
That's me, I'm the Mourner.
The Mourner.
Mourning the death of civilization every day. Electronauts comes to PSVR. Ever wanted to ride the vibes of a top DJ playing a packed festival's main stage? Here's your chance to shine. All it takes to be an electronaut is the passion to become one with the beat. I don't think so. Flipping Death comes to PlayStation 4. When Penny dies under mysterious circumstances, she wakes up and finds herself filling in for Death himself, and that's in all capital letters.
Yeah, all caps.
This temp job comes with a new power, the ability to flip between the worlds of the living and the dead.
Sounds familiar.
Madden NFL 19 comes to PS4 on the 10th. Madden NFL 19 gives you game-changing control on and off the field. Real player emotion transforms the way you play Madden, delivering gameplay control with precision and intent. Overcooked 2 comes to PlayStation 4. Overcooked returns with a brand new helping of chaotic cooking action. Journey back to the Onion Kingdom and assemble your team of chefs in classic couch co-op or online play for up to 4 players. Did you play the original Overcooked?
No, I heard it was good, though.
It's very good. It's incredibly frustrating.
That's
when you're
great.
playing with
I
someone.
love frustrating shit.
Like, I was getting so mad playing it with Erin that, like, I was like, we can't, it's going to ruin our relationship. We can't play this game.
Oh, my God. I please let me read this one.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Poop Slinger, PS4, a casual poop launcher game where poop and the slingshots combine for one heck of a smelly experience.
That's a game. That's not made up.
It's a game. It's on. Actually, you could. It's on PlayStation. Oh my God!
Thank you for reading that with such gusto. I appreciate that. Slamland comes to PlayStation 4. Dunk your friends to amaze a giant blue man in Slamland, a magnificent 4-player couch competitive party game by Bread Machine. All right. Tetris Escape comes to PS4 and Vita. Tetris Escape is a platforming puzzle game all about blocks named Tetras, which can turn into different Tetraminos to fill holes and master puzzles. There's a joke there I'm not even going to make.
Yeah. I was trying to formulate it, but I was like, I give up.
We Happy Few comes to PlayStation 4 on the 10th. We Happy Few is the tale of a plucky bunch of moderately terrible people trying to escape from a lifetime of cheerful denial. Discover the retro-futuristic city's dark history as you play through the intertwined narratives. This is an interesting one, Chris, because this is a Compulsion Games game, and Compulsion Games is now owned by Microsoft. So
yeah,
I'll be interested to see.
This is also an early access game.
Yeah, that's true.
I played a while ago, and
is it good?
I played it in the beginning of early access, so I wasn't all that impressed by it. But apparently, it's significantly different now. So I should jump back into it. I should check it out.
It gives me BioShock vibes, but I don't know if it's just the aesthetic. I don't want to go in expecting I'm going to get BioShock.
You definitely don't want to go in expecting BioShock. BioShock is a very tailored, brilliantly crafted experience.
I just love games like that though, like or situations like this where it's the same thing with Minecraft. Like Microsoft Xbox is making money on every copy of that game sold on PlayStation.
That's so strange.
And with this, I assume they must have a publisher already lined up before the Compulsion Games kind of deal happened earlier this year. But interesting, just an interesting wrinkle if you're a nerd like me. Finally, Word Search by Pogwai comes to PlayStation 4 and Vita. Word Search by Pogwai includes more than 300 puzzles to keep you and your friends puzzling for hours. Up to 4 can play. Actually, it's an exclamation point, so it's up to 4 can play.
I love the word puzzling as like a verb.
Yeah?
Yeah. Let's go puzzle.
Well, yeah. Let's puzzle, my friend. Let's puzzle. That's all for the games this week. I would highly recommend, obviously, Dead Cells. I would also say that I've heard Flipping Death might be pretty good, but you'll have to look into that. Obviously, some of you are going to like Madden. Overcooked 2 looks cool. And We Happy Few I'm interested in. I might have to pick that up when my brother leaves later this week. It's time to get into the reader mail. And wrap everything up. All right. Tyler Mitchell says, why do you think it is that Microsoft never copied the idea of a platinum trophy? That is some signifier that you've gotten all of the achievements. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't really know. I think it's because I think the PlayStation trophy ecosystem is more like an RPG. It's more about like leveling up and like experience points in a way. And on Xbox, having experienced both of them, Xbox it's more like a traditional video game like high score type deal. Like it doesn't really matter the completion level. All that really matters is the cumulative number. And that's kind of what people put stock in. It's like, oh, this guy's got 500,000 gamer score, or like 1 million gamer score or something like that. It's not necessarily this guy has this many platinums, you know? I think they're just kind of different ecosystems with different kinds of inspiration behind how they track them.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that I honestly would even go a little bit further in saying that, to be fair and to be honest, Microsoft has been a pioneer of many of these things, like Xbox Live, like the achievement/trophy system, and all of those kinds of things kind of emphasized this stuff much earlier than, I mean, it was 3 years before Sony had trophies when Xbox still had achievements.
Yeah.
And so I think I look at it in more of like, we made this up and this is our system and this is the system we're kind of sticking with. There's no reason to kind of alter it.
And it would also be like really weird to change it, because that would affect literally everything. Because again, like trophies, there is a weird kind of sanctity there, you know, where it's like if you alter that system even slightly, then that might affect stuff from the past, and it's just simpler to just keep things as it is and just focus on just having more variety in achievements rather than just kind of overhauling the system entirely.
Sure, well said. I would throw in there also just this kind of general idea that Sony was the one that had to differentiate itself, and so they did.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think Sony would have been perfectly happy not doing trophies if no one had forced their hand. So I think they just came up with a different system. And like Chris was saying, it's a more role-playing game-like system. Jalen Kelly says, "Hey guys, love the show and hope it keeps growing. Thank you."
Yeah, thanks.
With the PS4 on its way out soon to be replaced by the PS5, don't get too ahead of yourself, Jalen. Do you guys believe backwards compatibility with the PS4 is necessary? And will PS Now turn into Sony's version of Game Pass? What do you think of this?
It's absolutely necessary. 100%, because we've been kind of conditioned, especially this generation, more so than like previous ones, to expect that the hardware that we purchase that is going to replace the hardware that we have now is going to run more or less on the same platform and more or less on the same OS, but just kind of run our games better. I feel like that's what the Xbox One X and the PS4 Pro have kind of conditioned us to expect. So if the PS5 launches and we can't play PS4 Pro games, or like, that'd be insane to me. I don't understand why you would do that. And I think the consoles I think the PS4 and the Xbox One were kind of designed with that in mind. Personally, I think. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know that I can.
I would be blown away, actually, like shocked, dumbfounded, if the PS5 came out. Like, you can have launch titles, right, and like exclusives, right, that utilize the better hardware. But I would be so shocked if you couldn't play Horizon Zero Dawn or God of War, your copy that you own of that game, on the PS5. I would be dumbfounded by that.
I would go as far as to say that it would be completely unacceptable.
Yeah.
If you couldn't play PlayStation 4 games on PlayStation 5, both at retail and digitally. And I don't want to put all my stock into a company that I have no control over, but I would venture, Jalen, to say that it's impossible. That it's literally impossible to imagine that Sony would make a PlayStation 5 that is not fully backwards compatible with PlayStation 4.
I'm glad we agree on this.
It would just be it would
be insane, right?
It would be impossible, dude. I couldn't possibly imagine that they would do something like that.
Especially because we now know, especially on the Xbox side of things, where you can run your older games at higher resolutions, and like with the advantages that the newer hardware brings. So why not just make incredible new hardware that allows you to run your old stuff better? If we're becoming, I mean, the consoles are becoming essentially PCs. Let's be realistic.
Yeah, what do they call it? The x86 architecture and all that?
Yeah. You can run your old stuff better now because you have newer, better tech, but it's not, I don't know.
Yeah, it's not as proprietary as the Cell on PS3 or anything like that.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to see like the next generation. I think people need to be prepared to not see a massive change in user experience. It's mostly going to be, I think, power and just, architecture and like a huge increase in, I don't even know what the Xbox One X is going to do because they got like 6 teraflops or whatever. It's got to be like a massive jump from that. So it's weird. It's anyone's guess right now, but I would, I don't know. That'd be ridiculous if they didn't.
I agree. And I think that it's a money game, as everything that a corporation does is. And I feel like I think that there's no way to justify it no matter how you look at it. Like, even if they wanted to protect their $400 million investment in Gaikai and their streaming technology and stuff like that, they can continue to invest in that if they want. But I would argue that there's more money being made on the Microsoft ecosystem right now, of Microsoft allowing people to kind of penetrate Xbox Live and the marketplace for Xbox 360 on their Xbox One and buy games. And so if you're selling PS4 games on PS5, and you're still making money on it, then I don't understand why you wouldn't do that. I feel like this is a benefit to everybody. It was like we were talking about earlier, like who loses and who wins.
Yeah.
Everybody wins. The developers, the publishers, and Sony all win because they're just going to generate more income, especially if those games are cheaper and therefore more attractive.
Yeah, and also you should also consider the fact that Xbox One right now has backwards compatibility with the previous generation, which is a lot more, which I would imagine is a lot trickier to do than this to the next. So if they were smart, if Sony was smart, they would take a note from that.
Remember, you can't even natively play PS1 classics on the PS4. It just doesn't make sense even to not make an emulation.
It's the main reason to own a PS3. So you could play PS1 games.
It's very, very weird. I guess, Chris, I shouldn't say that it's impossible because Sony does some fucking strange shit.
Yeah.
But they are going to pay the price if they do that. Like it's just, people are looking at Nintendo and Microsoft and what they're doing right now in a very positive light, and I think that's great, and I think it's earned.
Yeah.
And Sony, people in this, I've been in this industry a long time. You and I have both been playing games a long time. People are always looking to take a swipe at the person who is at the top, and companies very rarely retain their dominance.
No, yeah. Every console cycle, typically you have, a battle for the crown, and it more or less always kind of slips. And, history would dictate that this is kind of the point where Sony starts to get cocky, and something happens that, like, Nintendo's already kind of, like, usurped their previous, like, they've improved drastically from Wii and Wii U. So I think, if they don't do this, if they don't accept that backwards compatibility is absolutely a necessity, then this is going to be the point where Microsoft does that thing they did with the 360 again. And, it'll continue. The cycle continues. Keep
this in mind, all of you out there that like more nerdy and academic stuff. The only cross-generational dominance that ever happened in video game history was PS1 and PS2. That was the only example of a company winning 2 back-to-back generations in a overwhelming fashion.
Yeah.
So it's always incumbent on you to be smart, watch what I think Microsoft has done Sony a great service by showing them, as they have in the past, exactly where the game, like Sony has been more a follower in terms of massive trends. That's just true. When we were talking about Xbox Live and achievements and interconnectivity and all that kind of stuff, and Microsoft showed them with Xbox One out of necessity, Game Pass, backwards compatibility, Game Pass, backwards compatibility, Game Pass, backwards compatibility. And if I was at Sony, I'd be like, those are great ideas, steal them.
Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly.
And not that they're not novel and new ideas. Obviously, EA did Game Pass first, and obviously backwards compatibility is very old. But he did ask also about Game Pass, though. Do you think that that's a relative thing? I think it would be very interesting to see Sony launch a Game Pass like Microsoft has or like EA has with their exclusives for maybe a premium, maybe fold it in the PlayStation Plus and start charging more for PlayStation Plus.
Yeah,
just like Amazon does with
honestly,
Prime.
I think that would have been smarter, personally, from the Microsoft point. I would have said raise the price of Xbox Live and just add this in. Because otherwise you have like several memberships and it's a bit tedious to like manage all that stuff. So yeah, I think that's a smart idea. Game Pass is great. It's a great value.
It's awesome. It's an awesome value. I love it. I love that. I love that.
It blows my mind that they're like making a ton of money off it. Like what is going on? Was it last week that we talked about how much?
Huge risk.
It's insane.
Huge risk, and it paid off for them. Mm-hmm. They could have easily destroyed their entire business doing that. They really could have.
Yeah.
Michael Ford says, with the ongoing success of GTA 5 and GTA Online, what do you guys think are the chances that Red Dead Redemption 2 can match or even come close to the same level of success? Do you guys see yourselves getting very invested in that game well after launch? And he says parenthetically, even though Colin seems to not enjoy online content. That's more Chris's wheelhouse. What do you make of this? I think it's fair to say that Red Dead will in no way touch GTA in terms of success, but will it have a ubiquitous place in gaming for years, do you think?
I think it's a bit harder to... Cowboys is a bit of a niche, I think, even in video games. So I think it's already kind of got a bit of an uphill battle going on when you compare it to GTA 5, which is a modern day third-person shooting sandbox, open world. It's every trend. It's every trend in one. It's well done and well executed, but it's essentially every trend put into a single thing. So I don't know if it'll reach even close to the same number of amount of success, but I'm sure it'll be a huge win. I think a lot of people are looking forward to it. I think it'll make a lot of money, and if they're smart with how they implement whatever the hell microtransactions that they will implement in that multiplayer mode, then it could potentially be another cash cow. But I don't know. I just want the game to be good.
Yeah,
that's all. The single player. I want the single player to be good. I love messing around in the multiplayer in those games. So as long as the single player is good, just give me like a tactile. I don't care.
We're gonna see. I think we have to look at it through the lens of Grand Theft Auto, as the question suggests. But this idea that I don't know that they can have a GTA or GTA Online level success without indeed cannibalizing that game in some respect. And with all these games as a service and kind of ubiquitous games like Fortnite and all these games kind of sticking around, plus, as we were talking about earlier, Call of Duty, Battlefield, Battlefront's going to come out next year, I'm sure. We're going to have Anthem. We're going to have The Division. Destiny 2 still rolling on. There's just so much more competition for your time, energy, and money than when GTA Online launched, 4 years ago. So it's from that perspective, I think it's a little bit more of a difficult thing for them to do. I think this game is a safe 20 to 25 million seller easily. Yeah. And I think that first of all, that's way more copies than any PlayStation exclusive will ever sell. That's a great sign for them. And maybe it'll grow into something like a 100 million seller, just like GTA 5 has. To Chris's point, I think it's a little bit more niche, a little bit more different. And I think that there's just more competition now. GTA Online came out at a very specific time in a very specific fashion.
Yeah.
And it's just not the same anymore. So I think that they might actually cannibalize their own product if they do that, which they might be happy to do. But needless to say, just like GTA 5 made all of its development costs back the first day it was sold,
it's insane.
All of it, it's the same thing will happen with Red Dead.
Yeah.
They must be, man, if I own Take-Two stock, I'd be pretty happy. Eric Fowler says, hey, Colin and Chris, as a JRPG virgin, now most people that play JRPGs are virgins, so welcome to the club. As a JRPG virgin, I tried out Persona 5 a few weeks ago, and I'm now hooked. I'm now looking for other JRPGs to dive into, and as Colin is a JRPG and a PlayStation guy, what are your best JRPGs on PS3 and PS4?
This is all you.
There's a lot of different directions to go in. Japanese role-playing game is not really a useful term anymore. We use it still, but there are just different kinds of Japanese role-playing games now. Just as there are different kinds of Western role-playing games, it's kind of reductive. If you're looking for PS3 games, I think Ni no Kuni is a great way. The Wrath of the White Witch is a great direction to go in. Really fantastic game. But what comes to mind for me, Eric, is the Tales series. I'm a huge Tales series fan, and there's just there's many options on both PS3 and PS4 for that series. You can play Tales of Exilia, you can play Tales of Zestiria. There's a lot of them. So that might be a great place to look as well. Dragon Quest XI is just coming up on PS4 in the next month. So that might, if you like traditional role-playing games, and it sounds like you do if you're playing Persona, then you might enjoy looking at that as well. Tyler Clark says, hey, Colin and Chris, just started watching your videos. They're great.
Oh, thanks.
What are your favorite palate cleanser games to play in between big, meaty games? I like playing sports games. Thank you. That's what his question says.
That's a good question. Oh, my God. I might have to think of it a little bit on this.
Well, as you would think, I will say that I don't really have one. No? I like to jump into the next experience. There are not many games I go back to and play. Tetris, maybe. Like I play Tetris Ultimate on PS4.
I go back and play a lot of games. I think I always, you know what? I'd say Doom 2016. I'll jump into like the Foundry level in Doom, or like Candy Sanctum or whatever. There's like two specific levels that I jump into because they're just like fun and just like, oh, I know this really well. And I could just like have a good time and just like, okay, it was good.
Having yourself a good old time.
Yeah, Doom's so good. Ugh.
It is good. There was a Polygon article that people were making fun of today.
It took me 2 years to face the new Doom. Violence makes me queasy.
Teach his own.
Yeah, man.
This one's a lengthy question, so let's get into it. Basil or Basil Frank? I think it's probably Basil, but I'm gonna call you Basil. Hey guys, loving the show so far. Glad to be a supporter. Thank you so much. And remember, you can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. 3-day early access, ad-free to every episode of this show, and the ability to submit questions like Basil or Basil did here. I had the discussion with a friend of mine recently, and it's about the title of Game of the Year. Do you think it still holds value to a consumer? To elaborate, I've been playing Bloodborne for the first time recently, trying to plat it, and I'm about halfway. I've spent a lot of time on that game, and in a year, thinking about back to 2018, Bloodborne will definitely be my game of 2018. Same thing with my friend. She played Final Fantasy 15, and it's her game of 2018, yet both games are not from 2018. To add to that, PUBG was considered for Game of the Year in 2017, yet it's not a finished game, but Fortnite wasn't, although Fortnite isn't done either. Can it be a 2018 contender? And in PUBG's case, again, if the final release, let me see here. If the final release comes in, let me see. Oh, and if the final release comes in 2018, I'm sorry. How about No Man's Sky? Came out in 2016, yet now is released on Xbox, so technically a really released game. So basically what he's saying here is, does Game of the Year have any use, and are we kind of mincing words in this kind of new ecosystem with early access and updated games and constantly? I think to answer his question, the answer is yes and no.
Yeah, I think Game of the Year has always been, I've never put much stock in it. It's just kind of like a fun thing to like talk about. You know, what's your game of 2016? It's there's no value, and there was so many Game of the Year editions of like, you remember, what was it, Arkham City had like a Game of the Year edition? I don't think that was Game of the Year. that year. You know,
Yeah,
it's
no one voted for Arkham Knight. I think was what I was making fun of too. Where I'm like, no one said Arkham Knight was game of the year. Get out of here.
It's like when it's like back in the day. I'm not sure if you see this anymore because I don't watch TV and I don't really, trailers.
What do you do, sir?
Well, I mean, what I'm saying, because like you used to see a lot of movie trailers that would be like the #1 movie in America, and it's like, is it? Like every trailer had that. Literally every trailer from like probably like the early 2000s to like 2012 had that in there. I don't know if they do it anymore, but it's arbitrary. It's I don't think it holds that much value. I think it's just kind of like a fun kind of thing to engage in conversationally. I've never thought of it as like an actual accolade.
Sacred Symbol is a PlayStation podcast. The internet's #1 PlayStation podcast, according to iTunes.
Yeah.
So you have to have a little caveat there. That's true. Game of the year. So at IGN, when I was there for a long time, we voted on Game of the Year every year, and it devolved into just arguing about things. It's how I feel about scores on reviews. I think review scores are completely insane. I rallied for a long time to try to get rid of them at IGN, and was pretty much the only person that felt that way. But it's this reductive. I don't want to say unacademic because that's not what we're really looking for, right? It's just the lowest common denominator way to describe something, right? A score or a game of the year or best action game and stuff. I'm like,
it also gives people an excuse to skip what you're actually saying about the game.
Right.
Like if you have a detailed review of a game, why read it why read it at all if you can just look at the score? You know? I've always preferred, that's why I've always like I always used to get my review information or like the game reviews from like YouTube and stuff because they would just talk about it and they wouldn't really give it a score. They would just like say their piece about it and then I would like think about what they had to say about it and then I would decide, does this fit my taste or not? You know?
I think you're absolutely right, and I think it's actually important that creators like us try to figure out new ways and clever ways to engage with an audience that has expectations of these things. Mm-hmm. And so with my reviews on side quests, I review them without a score and I talk about the game for 10 or 12 minutes, and you listen to my words that have definitions, as opposed to a 9 or an 8. I don't know what that means. The other thing is that with my Game of the Year video last year, I did a Game of the Year video because I expected that the audience would want that. But my Game of the Year video was really weird, where I'm like, these are games that I played that I didn't finish. These are games that I wish I got to. These are games, and people liked it because they're like, oh, this is very different, as opposed to saying like, oh, Horizon is the Game of the Year and that's it. It's like, well, there's other shit that probably would have been just as good, but I didn't get to it, and I want to at least acknowledge these games that I played for an hour or just saw a trailer for. Yeah. It seemed a little more honest to me. Mm-hmm. The third thing is that E3 coverage is another great example. I think E3 coverage is getting very derivative. Everyone's doing E3 predictions. No one was doing E3 predictions, and then we would like make literal bets and like stuff like that on our shows. And 10 years ago, I don't remember anyone doing that. And now when I looked at everything going on this year, I couldn't help but criticize it publicly, where I'm like, this is kind of lame. So I did my own thing where I did these very in-depth analyses of every show because I thought that that's the way I can engage with my audience and still give them what they expect, but give them something new and different.
Right.
So I think that a lot of it comes from, Basil, I think a lot of it comes from the very idea of just letting your creators know, or the people that you like out there that podcast or do videos or Twitch stream, to just give you something a little different. And then you can still talk about things within the confines of what we're used to in a new and different way. I think that's exciting.
Yeah.
And I like doing that. We did get a follow-up question from Straw Hat Ninja, our friend Straw Hat Ninja, who says, asking if we're going to do Game of the Year discussions. I am sure we will, and I am sure that we will find a new and different way to do it.
Yeah.
But maybe not. Maybe I'll just, you know what? Fuck all you. We're going to do it the old-fashioned way. Danny Atkinson says, with Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, Ghost of Tsushima, and Nioh 2 all coming out, it seems like every developer realized after the release of Nioh that there are not enough games set in feudal Japan. However, with all of these games coming, I wonder if there's enough room in the market for all three of them. Is there enough room for all of them? And if not, which game will suffer the most and which will come out on top? Interesting question. Yeah. What do you make of that? I think he's worrying about nothing personally.
Yeah, I don't think that's not oversaturated at all. And they're complete. I don't even think they're even close to the same kinds of games.
They're not.
Sekiro Shadows Die Twice.
It's a From game.
It's a From Software game. Ghost of Tsushima is a Sucker Punch.
Yep. And Nioh 2 is going to be a
Nioh sequel.
Yeah.
So I never really got the themes are the same, but we've had so many World War II games and modern military shooters and modern day. I don't know. I don't think it's a huge deal.
Right.
I'm personally excited for all these, but Nioh actually. I didn't play the original Nioh.
The original Nioh was good. I think I said on this show that I got Nioh before it came out and I couldn't get past the first boss. So there was like no way to help, for anyone to help me.
Oh, no.
You fight this boss on you enter this ship in like dock, and there's nowhere to go. I'm like, it's a guy with like a ball and chain, and there's nowhere to go. And I'm sure there's some very clever fucking thing you guys do to beat it. But I couldn't. Okay. And I actually
happens to all of us.
I associate Neo with Margaret Cho, the Korean.
Why?
I think she's Korean comedian, or is she? Yeah, I think she's Korean.
Yeah.
Because I was listening to old Rubin Report episodes as I was playing Neo, and they were just playing in the background, and that was
He did one with Margaret Cho.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
So that's like my weird admission about Neo. I'm looking forward to all of these as well, and they are different. You assume that a From game is going to have a very hardcore slant. Neo has a hardcore slant as well. Ghost of Tsushima seems to be a much more accessible third-person action game. The one that's going to sell the worst out of these three is Neo 2.
You really?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so, probably.
Neo sold very appreciably enough that they convinced them to, Tecmo Koei to make a sequel. But remember, Tecmo Koei is not Capcom. Tecmo Koei is not EA. Their expectations for sales are way lower.
They're also not Sony and From Software.
Right, exactly. So I'm rooting for them. I thought it was
Yeah.
really exciting when they announced that because people want Ninja Gaiden and all those kinds of things and they're not getting it. So this is pretty much Neo is more of an extension of Ninja Gaiden to me than it is an extension of Dark Souls
Yeah.
or Demon
Absolutely.
Souls.
I'm excited for Sekiro, personally.
They all look really cool or sound really cool. I don't think we really saw much of Shadows Die Twice yet.
Shadows Die. Well, again, they made a From Software game and they put grappling hooks in it. So
True enough. Now
I'm sold.
the order that the games are going to sell, Ghost of Tsushima is absolutely going to sell better than the other two, and then I think you have Shadows Die Twice, and then again Neo 2 after that.
I think it's a solid prediction.
And the reason I predict that, by the way, is I think Shadows Die Twice. I could be wrong, but I think that's on multi-platform.
It is
multi-platform
multi-plat,
game. The other two are not. So that's important to keep in mind as well. Neo 2 is a PS4 and it may be a PC exclusive. Tyler Oakfield says, I have 2 kids, 3 years old and 3 months old. Sorry about that. So my gaming is usually at night when everyone is asleep, and I usually play for about 3 hours. So my question is, when do you guys usually play games, and for how long? This is a fantastic question.
It's totally sporadic for me. I have no schedule at all. Sometimes it'll be at like 3 a.m. Sometimes it'll be at like 10 a.m. Sometimes it's 5 p.m. It's whenever I have the time and I feel like I want to play something, or if like I get a code, or if I oh hey, there's a sale on something. I'll download this and play it. I was like playing Cluster Truck the other day. You ever seen Cluster Truck?
No, that's a great name though.
It's ridiculous. It's a dumb like kind of arcadey thing. I don't even know how to describe it.
Wasn't there a game? I could be making this up. Wasn't there a game called like Cluster Cluck or something like that too? Or something with chickens. That had
probably.
Everyone's always making a little wordplay there.
Yeah.
Like Big Mother Truckers.
Anyway, Big Mother Truck. I don't know. I think I have no schedule whatsoever. I wish I did.
I typically play games at night, very late at night. You can actually see the trophy. If you go on PSN profiles, it's super interesting. If you go on PSN profiles, look at people's trophies, you can even see by like date, month, week, and then like time and like when they earn the most of their trophies. And I think mine used to be like typically on weekends all day and then at night. And that's because I worked a normal job. And I think that that's become much more slanted towards just nighttime generally now that I own my own business and am chained like a fucking idiot to my desk all day. And by the way, Tyler, I was only kidding. It's great that you have kids. I can barely take care of my dog.
It's a good clarification.
Tyler, it's great that you have children.
Colin Moriarty, fuck your kids, 2018.
Sakani Adabimpe, I think I said that right, said, hey, Colin, and Christ, and he says Christ.
Oh, look at that. Thank you for the finally realizing who I be.
Congratulations on 5 episodes of Sacred Symbols. We've made it 5 episodes so far.
Look at that.
Love the candid work and look forward to an even brighter future for the podcast. I do too. And hey, I haven't shared any of this with you guys because the numbers are a little late. And if you look at SoundCloud, you can always see the numbers that are there. Every episode of SoundCloud of Sacred Symbols on SoundCloud, based on how long it's been on, has done better than the one previous to it.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we're growing and we appreciate that. Thank you so much. Remember to tell your friends. Tell your mom too. Over the past 2 years, I am becoming slowly unsettled with the direction that Sony may take PlayStation given their dominance in this console generation. From the seemingly unnecessary price increase of PS Plus to the flamboyant nature of the E3 2018 press conference, that's a great way of putting it, to the fiasco over cross-play functionality, I have some concerns that the next generation of PlayStation could suffer at the beginning, nothing severe like what transpired with PS3, but nevertheless troublesome. My question to both of you is, do you believe that these decisions will have any significant impact on the future success of the next PlayStation, and could persistent changes like this serve to drive away some of its current install base towards their competitors? Or will Sony maintain the trust of consumers by altering their approach when the time comes?
Wow. I think we talked a little bit about this a little bit earlier, where I think if they don't take notes, right, and they make mistakes that to me seem really easy to avoid, but you never know with these things. It's possible that they could mess up in a big way, but I don't foresee it being that big. I don't foresee them being that, sheltered. They don't have their heads in the sand, I don't think. I think they're aware of what's happening. So they're aware of the competition. They're aware of like what Microsoft is doing. They're aware of, man, I don't know. I hope they don't. They don't fuck up.
The reason I wanted to use Sakani's question here is because it brings up something very interesting to me about console loyalty and about a transient audience. Remember, I said earlier that audiences have historically shown in games from the very beginning, from the 70s, a transience. Most people are not loyal to a console. They're loyal to what the brand is doing for them now. That's totally reasonable for a reasonable stance to take. People like me that stuck with Sony during the early PS3 years, we really showed our gumption, but PS3 didn't actually sell very many units until later and ended up passing Xbox 360 through hard work. So look at the way Xbox 360 dominated mindshare, specifically in the West, specifically in the United States, and then look how everyone moved, or a lot of people moved to PS4, like as if it was nothing, because PS4 won the optical battle before the consoles came out. PS4 was cheaper. PS4, if you have 5 friends, 3 of them are like, I'm buying a PS4, then obviously, and you play Xbox One and you have one other person to play with, you might be, you might find yourself enamored with the platform that your friends are playing on.
Yeah.
So I say that only because Sony is in a precarious position if they don't keep the ship going, in the straight line, basically, because people will jump off of it in 2 seconds. They just did it.
Yeah, exactly.
To make PlayStation 4 successful. So why wouldn't they do it again? Like, I don't understand. The only thing, Chris, that I think is interesting to keep in mind is that the more things get digital and the more things get ubiquitous, with Xbox Live, with PlayStation Network, with Switch, with Steam, people are going to be more, I think, in line with staying where they are because they've invested so much money in it,
right?
Which was not a problem earlier. And if there's a cross-generation kind of thing and backwards compatibility, that might be compelling. So there's that kind of extra ingredient that was not there earlier.
Also the achievements and like trophies.
Right.
Because I know that was the big reason why, like, initially at the beginning of this generation, where even though I was like, yeah, PlayStation is clearly going to be the one that wins this cycle, I was like, I'm going to get an Xbox One because that's where all my progress is, and that's where all my backwards compatible stuff is. Right. That's where all my digital games are. Now I have everything. So. And
you have terrible taste, so that's the other
reason.
That's true. James Gallo says, I just picked up Horizon with the DLC for $20 and I can't put it down. I haven't played that yet, by the way. Since I stopped following games media so much, I have been way behind on picking up games. It has been great for my gaming budget and I haven't bought a game that disappointed me. And he says, cough, No Man's Sky, cough. With all the games coming out so fast, do you think gamers are better off waiting to see which games are hits and which games are misses? Keep up the great work, gentlemen. The podcast is fantastic.
Thank you.
What do you make of that, Chris? Because I do feel like there used to be this thing that we used to say at IGN and that you hear a lot in various gaming circles, and I think probably in entertainment circles generally, being part of the conversation, right? That's always the thing. You want to be part of the conversation. And that used to make me really mad because I'm like, well, what conversation are you talking about? And do you even have to have played or be intimately familiar with something to be part of a conversation? If you see, you don't watch football, I watch football voraciously, as you're going to find out when football season starts.
Right.
And I'm kicking you out of here earlier than usual because I want to watch Monday Night Football. And sometimes I get involved in a conversation when I've only seen the highlights. I didn't watch the full 60 minutes of the game, but I think I'm still part of the conversation. So I think that gamers are wise if you have self-restraint, which a lot of people don't. Our sphere is not known for that. They have to have it immediately at midnight. Yeah. They got to go to GameStop and get. I totally understand that. I'm not making fun of you. But if you have self-restraint and other things to distract you, waiting a few months to buy a game will not only get you the game cheaper, but you're going to get a better version of the game because it's been patched 5 times, and maybe DLC's also been available. The only reason I haven't played Horizon's DLC is because it came out so much longer after I played the game that I would probably never go back to it. So there are great advantages to waiting, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's more or less right. I think the only caveat to that would be very single player focused games where, especially ones like God of War, where everyone's talking about it and you just kind of like, I haven't finished this yet. And I remember I was like one of the last people to finish the game, and it was like frustrating because I didn't want to like. And my friends are idiots, so they have no sense of like, oh, this guy's only this far. let me like hold back on some story details. They have no sense of that. So I pretty much had to avoid them for like a good like week and a half as I finished that game because I knew that I would just get something ruined. I'm glad I didn't, but I think you're pretty much correct on that one.
It's interesting to think about. I think it's all a math problem. Like it's about how much time you have, how like your predisposition to spending lots of time with games, the amount, there's too many variables. So it's going to be different depending on who you are.
Yeah.
But I understand that need and want to play something immediately. I honestly only feel that need because I'm in the industry and I feel like I need to do that for you guys. There would be nothing I'd like more than to sit down with Mega Man X Legacy Collection 2 and just beat the shit out of it for 2 weeks. But that's a waste of my time, and then I won't be able to inform you guys about games. So maybe another answer is to rely on people like us to jump on grenades for you, as we often do. Kare Erickson, I think I'm saying that right. It's Kaare, Kare Erickson, I think.
Yeah.
Given the sordid history of the film industry tackling video games, as well as the fact that Netflix and Showtime are developing The Witcher and Halo into series, do you think television could be a more feasible medium for video game adaptations? What games, universes, or stories do you think would work well as TV shows?
I think it works better than films, personally, just because the nature of games, especially games with, long stories, are a lot more, comparable to a television series than they are to like a film, I think. But I also don't care. I don't care about it.
Great answer. I don't care either. I think there are many compelling universes that would be interesting depending on who you gave it to. I mean, what if you gave the Battlestar Galactica guys Mass Effect? What could they do with that? What if I think that there was, I don't know if it ever came out. Wasn't there supposed to be a Zelda Netflix series or something? Weren't they doing something with that?
I don't know.
Wasn't that a rumor like a couple of years ago? I don't know. Maybe
there's always a rumor. There's always a Gears of War movie or a Metal Gear Solid movie. That's one that's like recently cropped up. It's like, look at this Metal Gear, the concept art for the Metal Gear.
Which is the worst idea for a movie. How can you tell Metal Gear? Metal Gear hasn't been able to tell its story in 5 games, and you're gonna tell it in 90 minutes. I don't
know. I understand it because there are universes that I think are very, very interesting and very, very, I think that could be suitably explored in different mediums. I think actually Destiny, for all of its horrendous in-game storytelling, has a fascinating lore in those grimoire cards that they locked out of the game for some reason. Some like genuinely interesting sci-fi stuff is in those cards. They put out a book actually, apparently, I think. But I don't know. TV definitely works better than films do. You're not going to tell the entire Halo trilogy in a movie. That's not going to happen. But I just want a good game. I just want games. I don't know. I feel like I'm
exacerbated.
I feel like I'm crazy because like we have all these like rumors about movies, movie this, movie that. Hey, you want to see a Street Fighter movie? You want to see that twice? Why did we do so many fighting game movies? Why did we do that? I'm triggered.
You are triggered. It's the gnats. It's what it is.
They're digging into my head.
Yeah, they're infesting your brain.
Oh God.
My answer to this, and this might be a little more controversial, is I can't think of any movie that wouldn't have been better served as a TV show. That's pretty much my whole take on everything. Now that we have this beautiful ability that we didn't have even 10 years ago to tell robust stories that with seasons going up all at once on streaming technology.
Yeah.
A great example is The Handmaid's Tale, which is a small book by Margaret Atwood, I think her name is. That was made into a movie in the 90s that apparently isn't very good, but it's the show that allowed the universe to be fleshed out even beyond the bounds of the book. And so why wouldn't we want to give as much storytelling, as much time as possible? I'm so disinterested in films, contemporary films for the most part. I was watching Interstellar with Erin the other day, which is one of my favorite movies actually. And I'm like, this would be an awesome 10-episode series. Like, why does this have to be rushed? Even at 3 hours, it's rushed. You know?
Yeah.
And
no, exactly.
Yeah.
It doesn't have enough time to breathe. And that's why I think, if you were going the route of video games to like film or anything, it definitely serves better for it to be a TV show. But I just don't want it.
We have 3 more. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to point out, Interstellar is a great thing to because I realized recently. Are you a Queen fan at all?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard 39?
I don't know.
It's not like a really old Queen. It's like late 70s, early 80s.
I don't.
Apparently,
I don't know.
that song is straight up just the plot to Interstellar.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's super cool.
I'll have to look into that. Yeah, I think I only know their singles and a few other things. I like them.
Oh, it's good stuff.
I guess I'm kind of contradicting myself, but that Queen film Bohemian Rhapsody that's coming out in the fall looks pretty good.
Yeah.
But again, I'd much rather have that. That guy, that main character, was in Until Dawn, and he's the main character in Mr. Robot. He knows his TV shows, so let him tell that story in 20 hours instead of 2.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm crazy. Maybe people. I think I'm not crazy though. I think film gross is going down, even though movie prices are going up because people want to stay home.
Yeah. No. Exactly.
Although I did see, Aaron and I watched the Quiet Place this past weekend.
What'd you think?
It was great.
I hated it.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it because of all the plot holes?
Yeah. Like you have a.
It's a horror movie. It's a horror movie, so I tried to get over the plot holes.
That's true. Yeah.
But it didn't treat itself like a horror movie. It almost treated itself like honestly kind of felt like M. Night a little bit. Like it felt like The Village in almost a weird way.
Yeah, no, I could see where you're going with that.
But I liked it. It's getting a sequel. I'll be interested to see what that's all about.
Oh God, A Quieter Place.
An even more quiet place. I would like it to be named if that's okay. 3 more questions. David S. Graham wants to trek back in the political territory, and I think this is a totally reasonable question to bring up here on this show. Mm-hmm. With the ongoing conversation between you two regarding the apparent disproportionate amount of liberalism in games coverage, I would like to play devil's advocate and pose the question that being deeply entrenched in games to the level that those who write about them is an inherently liberal concept. Could it be just that while the average consumer of games could lean either direction, there simply isn't a sizable pool of prospective conservative games media press to begin with? I thought of this because being an individual in a deeply red part of the country, family video territory, thank you for that. That's another knockback reference. I find only those who are at least somewhat liberally leaning or centrist and or apathetic to a lesser extent come close to caring about games to the granular level that the likes of you, Chris, and Colin, that's me, actually do. This is an interesting one to me, Chris, because there are myriad studies that suggest that the arts and entertainment are more liberal skewing. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
If you were to pick out a person and say, like, you make a video game, you cover a video game, and you were just going to use probability on your side, you would always choose them as being a liberal, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that there's an exclusionary slant to that thought process. And the reason I think that is because there are tons of conservatives that play games. So why wouldn't you just take it to the next level? If they're interested enough in the creativity surrounding a video game, then certainly there would be voices out there that would be interested in taking it to the next level and so on and so forth. So to me, there's a contradiction in that. I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I'm saying that there's, if what you're gleaning out of this is there are no conservative or even moderate writers at major game websites, and that's a normal occurrence of the market, I think you're totally wrong. And that's my only stance on that.
Yeah, and especially considering like, I've always been interested in this stuff, and I'm liberal, but as time goes on, the window is shifting to the point where I don't even know what the hell anyone would call me.
Right. What do they call that? The Overton window? Is it the window of acceptable behavior? Or whatever?
It's just like there's stuff that I read like some kind of study that was like, oh, liberals are being censored on college campuses, right? And it's like, that's probably not even false, because I'd imagine there's probably people who are even further to the left who are making just normal liberals like feel weird about saying basic shit. So I don't know. There's definitely conservatives out there who care. I'm sure there's a bunch of rags, like independent like news sites that are run with a far more moderate or even apathetic slant. So I don't know. I don't really get it.
We're talking almost about multiple things, Chris, in the sense that
it's a broad concept.
I would never suggest that a company like Kotaku, for instance, would need to hire a conservative or moderate writer or a Trump supporter or whatever. But I do suggest that would be great for their business. And that giving more voices and platforms to more disparate voices and removing the idea of disparate voices being only tied to a person's skin color or religion or something like that. Religion's different, maybe not an immutable characteristic, but a person's skin color, a person's place of origin, etc., gender, sexual identity. Yeah. I think that wrapping up the disparate opinions in that sphere isolates what's in our heads, which is the political, the socioeconomic, the philosophical, all those kinds of things, and that it's at great detriment to the gamer that they don't get to hear more of those opinions. So I would never suggest that any of these outlets had to do it. I just think it would be very good for their frankly universally, I don't want to say dying or failing, but universally declining businesses.
Yeah, and I think you just get better content overall, I think, because when you find yourself surrounded by people who agree with you, you're not really as challenged, and you get kind of lazy. You get kind of lazy with what you're talking about, and you just, because like everybody thinks this way, let me just, and you just kind of end up looking and sounding like an idiot sometimes, not necessarily because you're dumb or because you're smart or you're not capable of having intelligent conversations, but because you just haven't needed to, because you've just been surrounded by what you've ultimately been thinking for years.
Right.
And the more you have, not necessarily like combative voices, but the more you have like kind of a more unique blend of different perspectives, the more cogent your points might become, and the less ridiculous it would seem when you put them in an article. That's, I don't know. I just started rambling for a second, and then I got really hungry.
Oh, I'm pretty hungry. My stomach's been rumbling, actually. I don't know if people have been hearing that in the microphone. The interesting thing, you and I were just talking about it because it just happened today at the time we're recording this, is like the whole Alex Jones being purged from all of these platforms, right?
Yeah.
By big corporations. And we were talking about the window kind of shifting away from reasonable discourse, even in entertainment, like video games. And I find it so strange that my what I would see reasonable stance of like just free speech, free expression, paramount, both in the corporate and government level, and let's see where the cards fall where they may, is actually being shifted out of the window of reasonable discourse for some reason. And I think that's unbelievable. So I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, to your point, people aren't being challenged on these things, and they think it's like blowing in the wind instead of having a consistency. And I think that by grounding arguments over many years at these different outlets from a different perspective, we'll let those arguments breathe a little bit more. And then maybe we won't have these kinds of problems anymore, because it's a very exclusionary situation that, again, they're allowed to do. But I look at the statistics, and I look at their metrics, and I look at every time Kotaku posts something on Twitter, people are just making fun of them. That wasn't like that a few years ago.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like there's no better evidence than that you just read some of the articles, or even just some of the headlines that come out of places that heavily skew to one side. Like, you look at InfoWars, and you read a headline from InfoWars, and you're like, what is this crazy shit? If you were surrounded by people who like not only cared about you but disagreed with you, you wouldn't make such a stupid argument, because people who cared about you would tell you that that's a dumb argument. And the same thing would be applied to any left-leaning publications. You want to hone yourself.
It makes you more honest and more genuine, I think. But, teach his own. So I hope that, again, I don't want to veer too much into politics unless the situation calls for it here on Sacred Symbols, but these situations, similar to the Kaepernick situations are calling for it. So
yeah.
And honestly, we've gotten a lot of nice feedback about our political talks too. Only a couple of people have been upset about it.
It's gonna happen regardless. That's what politics does. It just pisses people off.
What did we promise?
It pisses me off when I hear myself talking about it.
I know, it pisses me off too. But I can't. It's what we were talking about when you got here. I'm like, I can't stop. Like, it's just, I feel like I'm being disingenuous and dishonest and not fighting for the things I believe in when I stay quiet. But that's just my take. But I will say that, it's what we said at the top when we started recording the show to begin with, over a month ago now. We're always going to tell you the truth. Yeah. And we're always going to be honest with you. And if the situations are divisive, then we don't make the news. We just commentate on it.
Yeah.
Get this name. Saulius Vecteris. It's a fucking hell of a name. First of all, it sounds like a villain in Mass Effect.
Yeah.
Hello, Colin and Chris. What is your thoughts on Metro Exodus? Did you like that they took open world route in the third game, while the first two were very linear games and no open world? Did you play the first two games? Thanks. Love your podcast. Do you like the Metro series?
I do, but man, takes a lot out of me, those games, because it's a lot of it's very pretty. It's like a gorgeous looking, not like visually like, oh, look at how doesn't it look serene and beautiful. It's just like really detailed and like incredibly well, like the art design is great, but just I like the level of survival elements in it, and like how much you have to pay attention to like whether or not you can breathe and stuff like that. But it's also like, I'm stressed out. This is stressing me out. I don't want to play this.
Right.
So I play it for a little bit. I like it, and then I stop. But I'm looking forward to it. It looks really neat.
What I like about it is that I have the book actually over on the shelf. It's based on a huge Russian book.
Yeah.
And it's a dystopian book. And I like that, we talk about perspectives and all these kinds of things and settings and things that are really essential actually to video games. And it's not every day that you have a post-apocalyptic game in Russia. It's a totally different perspective. It's not like Westerners made it. The 4A Games is Ukrainian. And actually, if you look at, and obviously the author himself is Russian that made the actual book, similar to The Witcher being made in Polish, based on a Polish series. So it gives you a different perspective that we just don't get very often. And I like that 4A Games, when they were showing Last Light, which was the second of the 3 Metro games, at E3, the Ukrainian situation with Russia was going on, and they were basically making the game in Kiev like with gunfire and crazy shit happening like outside their window.
It's insane.
And the stories that were being told about that were really interesting. So not only does it have that interesting perspective and that interesting gunplay and the interesting story, but it also has this equally interesting provenance of how and when it was made. And I think that's pretty cool. Yeah. So I'm excited for them. I hope that it's good. I don't know that it needed to be open world. I have a little bit of open world fatigue. I liked that Metro, similar to Wolfenstein, was a more linear kind of shooter, but I'm looking forward to it, and I'll certainly play it when the time comes. We have one more question. It comes from Joshua Petersdorf, who says, why does Square Enix keep sending Tomb Raider out to die? Last time it was exclusive to Xbox for a year, then came out to PS4 at a little fanfare, even though it was a better version. And now it comes out in one of the most crowded falls ever. Do you think it will sell well and or be successful enough to warrant a sequel? I'm excited for it, but towards the bottom of my priorities for games.
Man, I don't even know. I forgot we were talking about this before in one of the previous podcasts.
I think it was last week, maybe.
It was either last week or the week before. I was like, I totally forgot that Tomb Raider was coming out this year. Because there's so much.
It's too much. The game's gold, so
I'm surprised it had 3 games, honestly. I didn't think that it would last that long. I don't know. Not to say that it was like bad or anything. I just I didn't know anybody who was particularly. It wasn't God of War, you know. It wasn't Destiny. It wasn't like any of these things that everybody was talking about. Or Fortnite.
Is it going to sell well? No. And I don't know if it's even because of when it's coming out. I just don't know that there's this incredible interest in Tomb Raider. I think that it'll sell.
But there has to be, because they made 3 of them.
They did, but it's to his point, the original Xbox was this kind of, or the original Tomb Raider rather, was a kind of a cross-generational thing that people really liked. And then Rise of the Tomb Raider, to his point, was stranded on Xbox. It came out, I think, around the same time that Uncharted was coming out. And the situations were really quite interesting to watch, because people might recall that I used to make fun of it a lot, where they couldn't get their exclusive shit straight, where you could tell that they were talking about it. And I'm like, when is it coming to PS4? Why won't you just admit it? Why won't you just say it? And it got wrapped up in that whole thing. And then by the time it came out, to Josh's point, it was old news. So I think it's obviously selling well enough by Square Enix standards to facilitate a new game and so forth. But I don't know that it's ever been this top tier 10 million seller, topping the charts kind of game. I just don't. And I was just looking at my list, because I wrote off the top of my head, even when I'm Metacritic, and just wrote down a list of 10 games that I want to play for the rest of the year. And it wasn't even on there. I don't think I even saw it, or it didn't catch my eye, and that's a problem.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just a weird situation that game finds itself in.
It is. I think it looks cool. I'll be interested to play it when we get a copy, but
yeah, I don't think they're bad. They're not. It's not even that they're bad games. It's just they just kind of exist, and they don't drum up a lot of hype. I don't know.
It's kind of like me. I just exist. I also don't drum up a lot of hype. So I'm the Tomb Raider of humans. That's all for the questions. Remember, you can submit questions on Patreon at patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. And I'm doing my best to take a smorgasbord, a selection of questions. I'm getting a ton of them. I can't use them all. I can't use even a quarter of them. So I apologize about that, but I'm trying to get the ones that I think, I'm trying to look for different names, and I'm trying to.
Your comments are always super well worded. It's a very eloquent selection of reader mail.
Oh, thank you.
It's insane.
Well,
I get comments, and I'm and it's just what is that? Oh, leet speak. I'm like, what? Why are you typing like this? I'm just reading yours, and it's all these actual mini essays. What?
Yeah, my dude, the CLS audience is fantastic. Just a fantastic and often disparaged group. I'll fight to the death for you guys. Fucking watch me do it. I'll do it.
Oh my god.
I keep staring at your Snapple. You have a lemon tea Snapple. It reminds me of Long Island. Of course, Long Island, the home of Snapple.
Yeah, I brought it with me from the East Coast because I couldn't stop. It's a problem.
It's so good.
It's a good sign. I every time I go into a pizza place, I look for it because it's a good sign that it's okay, this is probably gonna be good.
Yeah, there's a deli for people that ever visit Santa Monica, especially if you guys are going to the beach. It's a great sandwich spot called Bay City's Italian Deli. Fantastic deli. Order online. Never go in there and order in person. You'll be there forever.
Really?
Yeah, it's super packed.
Oh
usually.
No.
But they have Snapple and all this. Very East Coast vibe there.
I remember when I got out here for the first time, I was like, oh man. Live right next to a gas station. That's neat. I get a pretty good supply of Snapple here going. And I go in, and it's just peach. It's just peach out here. I don't know what Californians, why you guys are so obsessed with peach shit. But it's the default flavor. Lemon is the default flavor. Yeah. Why would you not have it's like not having white rice at a supermarket.
You're upset.
I'm hungry.
And I don't really...
I'm hungry and cranky, and I didn't go to the gym. I'm all mad.
I know. I don't blame
I'm
you.
all mad at myself.
God, you're all upset. The gnats are probably...
Is that a Raggedy Ann?
Yeah, it's we put Lola's toys in various places to see if she'll actually get them or not. Because she's very... If one of her toys on the ground, she'll grab it and fuck around with it. But she'll very daintily go at things that are on tables or whatever. And so we sometimes place things around to see if she'll grab it.
Yeah.
So that one
I turned to my right slightly, and there's a guitar with a Raggedy Ann hanging on it, and I had a slight heart attack. Not gonna lie.
The shadow from this perspective makes it look like Raggedy Ann has like a 5 o'clock shadow.
I don't like that. I don't like this at all.
It's 2018 Raggedy Ann. It's all good.
Oh my God.
Chris, thank you for your time today.
Of course.
I will let you go now. And I thank all of the audience out there for listening to Sacred Symbols as well. Remember, even if you're listening on Patreon, it would be very helpful if you reviewed our show on podcast services like iTunes and gave us nice scores and said nice things because it helps us algorithmically. We are still floating towards the top of the chart, which is amazing. And that's all thanks to you guys. Support the show on Patreon, patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. $5 a month gets you early access to this show, ad-free, 3 days early, and early access to all my other shows as well. And just lets us do this show so I can pay Chris very handsomely so he can retire early and retreat to the Bahamas. I think that's it.
I think so.
We'll see you next time
Good
for more
show.
Sacred Symbols. Good show to you as well. We'll see you for episode 7 next week. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Right. Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is fan-supported over at patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. The following names are at the producer level or higher on Patreon, and I want to thank you from the very bottom of my heart for your incredible kindness and generosity. Ahmed Alloways, Martin Beck, Fred Bentz, Michael Betts, David Blodel, Mark Boggio, Spencer Brand, Isaac Brewer, Lennon Brixey, Matthew Brousseau, Josh Bushing, Austin Bullock, Andrew Burkhart, Alex Cabrera, William Caldwell, Luis Cancato, Matthew Canoy, William O. Carroll, Shermer Carter, William Cashel, Brian Chand, Travis Chandler, Sean Chandler, Kenneth Char, David Chestnut, Steve Clifford, Dan Clifford, Chris Cochran, Simon Conception Jr., Brad Cooley, Nick Cummings, Daniel Diamore, Daniel Del Nicos, Travis Depew, Mitchell Durkash, David Ellis, Albert Escobar, Brian Fink, Joe Finelli, Eric Fickenbeiner, Connor Gashian, Alexander Gates, Michael Gates, Daniel Glassford, Nick Goblersh, Tyler Goodwin, David S. Graham, Josh Gravelick, Ryan Greenwood, Miranda Grubba, Nick Gustafson, Andres Guzman, Tyler Harris, Wyatt Henry, Josh Yeager, Clarence Johnson, Paul Joyce, Greg Juliffs, Jeremy Key, Kevin Komaki, Taylor C. Laudrin, Jackson Lasuka, Donald Laws, Joe Lawson, Don Q. Lee, Patrick Leslie, Dustin Lewis, Keith A. Lewis, Chad Lewis, Mark Liberto, Lou and Ray Loper, Josh M., Ryan T. Mandel, John McManus, Joe McPartlin, Albert Miranda, Patrick Malloy, Betty Ann Moriarty, Abe Mukhtar, Brian Nietzsche, Connor Nesbitt, Josh Netzel, Adam Nix, Brian Ott, Jorge Palomino, Reed K. Parker, Todd Paxton, Brendan Peavy, Marius S. Peterson, Enrique Perez, Eric A. Peterson, Jason Pettit, Lawrence F. Prokop, Eric R. Pryor, Brandon Reed, Michael Renner, Peter Reynolds, Shane Rayum, Jonathan Rice, Austin Riley, Ramon Rodriguez Jr., Petro Rose, Michael Sanchez, Matthew Savoy, John Scholes, Chris Schaefer, Toby Shootman, Gurman Sidhu, Riley Smith, Jared Stwave, Alexander Suarez, Steven Summingett, Ahmad Tamar, Tam Tran, Esteban Valentin, Oakley Waldron, Justin Wagaman, Tyler Woodall, Corey Wyatt, Tony Zaniga, Casual Misfits Gaming, Supershot ST, Mad Mock Media, Beric, Mubarak, Dav9834, Chris, and Donk 2015.